Immortality is the dream of many mortal humans regardless of race, background, gender, or anything else. Although the people rebelled, their rebellion against the natural order brought upon themselves the punishment of heaven, which came in the form of purple lightning that could wipe out all living things from the face of the earth. It is also the final obstacle to achieving immortality. But this story is about how the protagonist of this story survived the 999 misfortunes that befell him. There was a protagonist who lived in Nanzhou County in the Gangshan clan of the Taichung clan. He had a bird in a cage and a sister with whom he regularly talked. At one point, he wanted to tell his sister about such a thing as a lightsaber. His older brother had told her a lot of interesting things, but even if he had told her something about it before, she said she didn't remember anything about it. And then he started his speech about it being a kind of thing that could direct lightning into the ground to avoid it hitting the house while looking at the bird cage. He said the metal cage is suitable for use as a lightning rod. His sister asked him if he wanted to eat, to which he replied that he was not hungry and that he never wanted to eat the bird as it was a gift from the master. But Sister Qing Ming still felt sad because she thought her brother was suffering from hunger, realizing that the last bite of food had unfortunately been eaten yesterday. Our protagonist may have been the most boring hitman in the story, as he was originally just a mere programmer at a gaming company, and once again he fell asleep on the job while working overtime. But what he found unexpectedly upon awakening was that he was in a completely different, unfamiliar world in the arms of the head of the Taijun clan. He thought that by coming to this new world for him, he would be able to get rid of his status as a loser. He thought that he should build a foundation and a golden core, raise his level, reach the top, and become a leader in the world of immortality. But there was no way he could get rid of his mortal body, and that was what he considered a problem. Ever since he was a child, his master had fed him 5 kinds of insects in an attempt to help his cultivation. Another one of the problems was that in his opinion he was forever stuck at the stage of processing points, the required number of which he couldn't score. But that wasn't the worst of it today, because he didn't even have the energy to just stand up right now. When his sister heard this, she suggested that he go down into the mountains, hoping that someone would meet them on the way and offer them some food. She even told him that he didn't have to go with her because she could do it alone. She was about to go out, but all of a sudden her brother suddenly became indignant and decided that he was not that weak and that he could still find the strength to get up, go and catch some game for them in the mountain forest. He said there was no time for laziness and started walking with determination. The surprised sister asked him how it was that not so long ago her elder brother's stomach was gurgling so much that he could not even stand up, and now he had decided to go hunting. He called his sister with him, and they went. On the way, he talked about how big the forest was and whether they could find a wild rabbit in the forest. He also remembered to mention that he used to be a computer programmer. His sister asked what it was and if they could eat it, to which he replied in the negative. He could never have imagined that his experience as a programmer might be needed in this world because his view of the world is no different from that of game players in the real world. After all the basic information is presented in front of him, and animals are certainly no exception. And then he saw a rabbit hiding and decided to quietly and discreetly approach it as close as possible so that the rabbit had no chance to escape. But his plan was not to be realized this time. The thing is that not far from our protagonist and his sister were walking a few more brothers and talking very loudly at that. One of them shouted so loudly that he was a disciple of the 5 Swords Lu Cheng that everyone who was near him got scared and ran away, including the rabbit from the main character of the story, which he obviously did not like. He and his sister ran after the rabbit, but the rabbit managed to escape into the fenced area, which left them no choice, and they had to look for a new victim, as they are strictly forbidden to go beyond the border. The sister again offered to go downstairs and look for food there, but the brother didn't want that and said he had thought of another way, calling the sister to come with him. As soon as they approached those 2 brothers who scared all the living things around them, the brother told his sister that he planned to walk up to them, take the hoopuk from the bag and tell them it was just compensation for missing the fried rabbit. But not daring to do so, they decided to watch the screaming brothers. They came to their house and began to wonder who could have put so many protective talismans on it. They didn't expect to see something like this. They didn't realize that all these talismans were so carefully guarded and even thought about the demon lurking there. At some point, they thought of just leaving the letter behind. But they couldn't do that, and one reminded the other that they had promised to give the letter to the head personally in his hands, and that they could also ask for a few elixirs. Afterwards, Junior's older brother praised that he had correctly reminded him that the disciples of the 5-element sword were required to complete their tasks efficiently and report back when they returned. He also said that he was glad that Junior had such insight. But nevertheless, when they saw our protagonist, they quickly began to run away, forgetting absolutely everything. There, no one remembered the importance, the effectiveness of the tasks, and the fact that they were disciples of the five-element sword. There was only fear, but our protagonist tried to stop them and succeeded. He said that he was a disciple of the Taichung sect and that his name was Zhen Jinming. After that, he asked the purpose of his visit to their sect. The brothers stopped and were happy to see a living person. They were running away because of the mistaken belief that all the people of the Taichung sect were dead. After that, they normally approached Zhen Yu and his sister, who also came out to meet them, and introduced themselves as to who they were and what purpose they had come for. They said about their master's order to deliver one important letter that had fallen at this moment. The older brother scolded the younger brother for the letter that had fallen to the ground and picked it up and apologized, explaining that they were in a hurry. Then they decided to see if the sect leader was around, for the letter had to be handed to him personally. To which Zhen replied that master had gone into closed cultivation and could not be disturbed in any way at the moment. Upon hearing this, the brothers quickly handed Zheng a letter with instructions to give it to him as soon as he was free and started running away immediately, happy that the letter had been delivered. The sister drew Zhen's attention to the fact that they were running away, but Zhen didn't worry too much and told them that since they had traveled such a long way, the Taichung sect should show their appreciation with a few elixirs. His sister was surprised and asked how he knew they needed elixirs. They said that they shouldn't have been so worried about them. They were just following orders after all. Zhen told them that they shouldn't be so polite, but since their sect leader and his master were friends, there was nothing wrong with that. Zhen gave them the elixirs, which in his sect is a pill to Dina, and asked them to accept them. Although they pretended that they didn't want to accept such a generous gift, he knew all their thoughts, what they were thinking at any given moment. The thing is, he seems to be looking with his eyes, but he sees everything as if through a screen playing a game. When any thought arises in a human or animal, he sees it in the form of a pop-up notification. In the end, they accepted the elixirs and thanked him for them. They said when they accepted them that since he was so insistent, it was rude of them to refuse the elixirs, but in their minds they were very happy and didn't understand what was going on. Zhen also added that this elixir is not simple and that it is purified with the help of a cat demon and produced in 49 days, and that it needs special storage conditions because it melts in the light, disappears from water, and scatters in the wind. He said to remember that and not to open it right away. They asked when it could be opened, to which Zhen replied that he did not know and that they would know when the time was right, and then he went inside. One of them, no matter what, tried to open the elixir immediately with thoughts of getting rich as soon as possible, but the other stopped him and reminded him of Zhen's words, which said that everything could disappear if you tried to open it. They walked a long way back to their sect. All this time the elixir was carried by the elder brother, and the younger brother asked for help in carrying it further, but the elder brother, realizing the seriousness of the situation, did not trust the younger brother with this burden. At one point, the younger brother became so insistent that he decided to forcefully take the elixir away from the older brother. The younger one ostensibly wanted to help the older one to carry it, and the older one tried with all his might not to burden the younger one. And in the end, as expected, it didn't go well. The bag ripped open, the contents fell out. But they suddenly found a piece of something that didn't look like the pill that was supposed to disappear. The older brother decided to try to bite it because he thought it looked like a stone. And he lost the teeth he was trying to bite it with. And he was convinced that it was a rock. And he was very angry with Zhen for that. And also the younger brother noticed the disappearance of the dry rations and thought to the elder brother that it was not for nothing that the mountain and the gate of the clan where they had come looked so strange and suspicious from the outside. And he thought that everyone in that clan was a rogue. He decided that the rations could be forgiven, but the letter was more important, so he also decided that he had to go back and demand an explanation. So he and his younger brother went back to Zheng, and Zhen had already managed to print out and read the letter. His sister asked him what was in it, to which Zhen told her that there was nothing else in it but greetings. But suddenly someone knocked on the gate, and the sister went to see who had come to see them. It turned out that the guests were the same two brothers who had recently brought the letter and received the elixir. The eldest of them, Yan Fei of the Five Swords clan, demanded an audience. The younger one asked him whether it was necessary to be so rude now in the current situation of misunderstanding. The older man said that everything was fine and that he knew what to do and how to do it properly at any given moment. The sister opened the gate for them, and the elder brother told her afterwards that he apologized for the unexpected visit and that they remembered that the master had ordered a very important message to be delivered to the leader of their clan. He also said that they had to tell the head of Taichung personally, and that they couldn't pass it on to anyone else because they couldn't disclose the information to third parties. Then Jen came out, and then he saw many negative thoughts. After a little more thought, he told them back that he had already mentioned that the master was in close training and that he was having some difficulties, so he wasn't very comfortable receiving guests, and that anything important he could pass on a piece of paper. The older, evil, toothless brother decided to ask what kind of training strategy their master practiced, to which Jen replied that the practice was called no distractions for anything. After saying that, the older brother broke in without any further ado, pushing everyone away and started looking for the clan master. His younger brother followed him. They walked for a long time through various rooms and buildings, and eventually they sort of found the room they were looking for. They knocked before they entered, apologizing for their impudence. But when they went in and looked around, they saw no one there but 2 burning candles. Then they came to the table and saw a piece of paper which had not been burnt out. When they picked up this piece of paper, they saw that it was the remains of the very letter which they had been instructed to deliver to the master personally from hand to hand without intermediaries. After that, Big Brother became very angry and decided to teach Zhenyu and Qinming a lesson. Otherwise, if he didn't, in his opinion, the Five Swords clan would become a laughing stock in the end. At this moment, Jen and Qinming walked over to his older brother, and Jen said that he shouldn't have gotten so angry and reacted so badly because of a few tortillas. He was against making a big deal out of it. The older brother showed the rest of the letter and accused Jen of playing dumb and asked if Jen was really a disciple of the Taikun sect, why he had decided to burn the letter. Unfortunately, Jen had nothing to say to that. The brothers started destroying everything in their path and were going to kill the imposters in their opinion. They were destroying talismans even though it was not allowed. Qinming even tried to settle the situation by asking what they could compensate with, to which an elder brother from the Five Swords clan told her that their sect would be holding a special treasure gathering in a few days, and that he had come here to deliver a letter of invitation. But since the letter has now been destroyed without a written reply letter, the Taijun sect members cannot now believe that the invitation was not false, and it will be assumed that they were not invited to their big meeting, which is not acceptable. Qinming asked Jen if it was true that there was nothing important in the letter. After all, he told her exactly that, and she believed him without double-checking if it was true. She trusted him completely without any doubts. Jen told her that they couldn't leave the place because the lightning could kill them. But Qinming corrected him and said that he was the only one who couldn't leave by himself, but it wasn't about the two of them together. And after that, Qinming told the brothers that she was the daughter of the head of the Taichung sect, and that their master and her father must be old friends, and if they didn't believe her, she could go with them to the Five Swords sect to prove it. She also added that if their master didn't believe her words, she would be completely at their disposal. She decided to do so despite the fact that Jen tried to verbally stop her from doing so. The eldest of the brothers thought about it for a while and decided that it was a very good idea, and he agreed to it. Qinming and her brothers went to the Five Swords clan and kept their word. Jen tried to stop her, but there was nothing he could do to stop her. He realized that something could happen if she even went alone, but nothing depended on him anymore. Everything he could do, he had already done, and it had clearly backfired on him already. It was not known reliably how many people dreamed of becoming immortal and stepping onto the road of cultivation, but if one went against the will of the sky, one would receive its punishment. Purple lightning is capable of destroying everything to the ground, and people usually refer to it as the heavenly test. It can destroy everything and kill all living things. The thing was that the clan was under a dome, and the protection spells on the pieces of paper spread out everywhere held the protection of this dome. But as soon as Qinming left, the dome began to weaken significantly. Qinming saw this and realized that she had made a mistake by going outside the dome. She traveled back with her brothers, but it was already quite late. The heavenly disaster had already begun. These lightning bolts were summoned by the gods. One of them had eaten a lot of 5-element beetles, and at the chi tempering stage, he found that he could easily summon a heavenly disaster. When he saw the result, he realized that there might not have been any casualties if he hadn't summoned the lightning. He had done so uncontrollably. The other god at the table replied that he had never met anyone who had accumulated more than 8,000,000,000,000 chi. Even though he had been cultivating for so many years, he still couldn't pass the chi tempering stage. It's something that not many people can do and not immediately. Therefore, it's no wonder that he was able to summon lightning bolts. He went on to tell him that if he wanted to protect her, he needed to face the challenges without fear or intimidation. As it turned out later, the gods were Master and Jen after something like this happened once. After the incident, the Master had pasted new talismans all over the place and said that the security level in that place was the highest. And he told everyone about the boundary of the protective dome, beyond which he once did not dare to follow the rabbit Jen. And the Master then gave Qinming a caged bird that was to play with Qinming when she was lonely after the Master left. So the Master then went outside the dome to the bug peddlers that Zheng needed. He hoped that this would get rid of his problem completely. And he instructed Zheng to train and live with Qinming and keep a secret from everyone that he was away. He thought that in that case no one would bother them, and promised Zhen then that he would protect his sister so that she would never be harmed by anything. Master urged that until his return, they should not leave their territory. And this time, when she returned, Zhen was already lying under the rubble. He said to leave since it was a heavenly disaster. But suddenly, Qinming said that she had seen 998 of them before, and that she wasn't afraid of the 999th. Zhen was very surprised, as she couldn't remember it in his opinion, and took Qinming's cage, released the bird, and went to the roof to use it as a lightning rod, remembering Zhen's idea. She also remembered the words of the Master who had told her that Zhen could use lightning uncontrollably at any moment and harm her, which she wasn't afraid of. And even the scars didn't teach her anything in the end. She stayed strong and brave and told the Master that she could do it. She is sure of this since she has dealt with celestial disasters before and knows how to help her brother deal with his problem once again. The Master thought they were very funny as the brother wants to protect his sister and the sister wants to protect her brother. Their mutual concern made him laugh and liked it very much. Master also told Qinming not to look at her brother's constant showing off and that he actually felt helpless due to being a prisoner of the heavenly calamity. The Master told her that one day the celestial calamity might completely exhaust him, and then he would definitely need her help as he would not be able to survive without her. And so at the onset of another celestial calamity, she threw a cage from the roof to the right place, which saved Zhen in the end. She thought she'd failed and he wouldn't wake up, and he's glad she's alive after it's over. And it's all thanks to the fact that they've been through this many times before. She told him that she could already handle the heavenly calamity on her own without anyone else's help. Meanwhile, the brothers both woke up and were glad they had survived no matter what. They were in a lot of pain. Later, Qinming came up to them and handed them the bag they had dropped and said that she had put half a biscuit in it for them. They forgave her and Zhang in return and said she could finish the biscuits and take the bag back with all its contents. They said they had notified them and were about to leave. After everything that was happening, Zhen suggested that Qinming go to the Five Swords sect together since spells no longer worked anyway, and so they could already participate in the meeting and possibly find a new shelter. He became, for the first time in so many years, truly ready to finally see the outside world, what it looked like, what was out there in general. He became very curious about the outside world. And the next day they left the place where they had lived for many years and set off on a journey, having agreed in advance to be on the alert, as at any moment everything could happen again in any place. When leaving the clan, they left notes at the entrance stating that the protective dome had been destroyed by lightning, they were fine in the end, and had made it through. They also asked not to worry about them and indicated that they had gone to the Temple of the Five Swords alone. After they left the clan, some other adult brother and sister came over to him. They saw a purple lightning flashing in the distance, and it only flashes where people want to become immortal. The brother told his sister that there were many practicing hermits in the world who hid themselves from the world. But the sister, after reading the notes, didn't really believe that those who had gone away were all right. She didn't believe that Zhen was on the path of virtue and there was no need to worry. Brother read the notes and said in reply that their Serenity Temple in the Shu Mountains was also invited to a meeting in the Five Swords sect, and if they were lucky enough to meet Zhen with Qinming, they could ask for some advice. On the way, Zhen and Qinming chatted about the destination. The sister told her brother that they would need to demonstrate something from their sect at this gathering, to which the brother replied that he thought that only a few kinds of medicinal herbs would suffice. Cetra liked the idea, and they walked on in silence. But their silence was interrupted by several flying men. When Zhen saw them, he wanted to run away as fast as possible, to hide from them because the master said that such people were usually evil. The master also said that such people often robbed and killed honest people and that they were capable of anything. Cetra found his words believable and convincing, and she wondered if the master was like that. Zhen thought that those people were very strong since they could fly, and that there was no way to defend themselves against them if they wanted to do evil. Without the protective dome, he thought, they would be crushed like little bugs. But, as expected, those flying men were able to find them and flew right up to them. They asked if they were the disciples from the temple on the mountain where they had found the notes. After assessing the situation and gathering a dossier about them, Jen realized that they were two masters of the golden pill and decided to ask him why they were asking this. To which in response, the man introduced himself as the senior disciple of the Serene Mountain Shu Temple, Xiang Zhengjeng, and he introduced the sister as his sect sister. He said that he was just about to pay a visit, but Jen and Qin Ming had left. In response, they introduced themselves to the senior disciple as Xiao Ming and his sister Xiao Hong, and that they were just traveling monks passing by. But Xiang didn't believe that there could be such strong traveling monks in such a place. He suspected a lie in Jen's words. Xiang also added that he wanted to discuss something with the Taichung Temple's mentor, and since Jen and Qin Ming weren't from there, they were leaving. Jen thought about his words. He thought about the fact that the mentor was in trouble, and this Xiang clearly wanted to score an arrow on him, and that even though he had defeated the heavenly calamity, he couldn't win in cultivation in case they attacked. But Xiang and his sister changed their minds and let Jen and his sister go. Xiang and his sister didn't know what to do because Jen and his sister's abilities were clearly superior to theirs, even though their level was low. And according to them, if they are really from Taichung Temple, then they obviously know something, and that the girl might be the daughter of the immortal master who ascended yesterday. Jen watched Xiang and his sister, and in response to Qin Ming's question as to why they were standing there doing nothing, he said that perhaps they were telepathically communicating at that moment, and he was right, because that's how it was. And then the situation gets more interesting because Xiang decided to give Zhenyu a spiritual pill of the 5 elements of their Serenity Temple, which is an excellent remedy for practitioners of qi tempering. Zhen gladly accepted the gift as although it was a drop in the ocean to his 8585521 units of qi, it was still a worthwhile item. Xian then suggested that they become friends since they met because the world is so big between heaven and earth, and one should be friends with someone in this world so that it would not be boring to live in it. But Jen refused their offer and went further away with his sister. And Xiang turned to his sister and said in response to her words about the girl's arrogance, that if she had a father who had ascended with the help of a heavenly calamity, she would be the same, and that they were only helping those not in need. And they flew on to the 5 Elements sect with the hope of meeting these same 2 children there and asking them to teach them something. Zhen and his sister arrived at the 5 Sword sect in a carriage, and he was surprised that the sect was in such a cold place. He was also surprised that the sect could be outside the city. But the carriage driver told them that the 5 Sword sect had to be reached by the Lotus Peak and that there were ordinary people living in the town who went to the monks for advice. He showed them the way of passage through the chains and told them that he could only take them to this place. Zhen asked the driver if he could pay for the medicinal herbs, to which the driver got very angry and hit Zhen. Although he was not young, he hit him hard enough. The sister asked her brother if he was sure if they really needed to go over that bridge. To which Zhen replied to her that if they have such a bridge, then most likely this sect is very famous. He also added that they are not afraid of difficulties and it's worth it for them to pass. Even though my sister grew up in the mountains, she has a great fear of heights, and while he carried her across this bridge, she sat on his shoulders with her eyes closed. He was carrying her on the bridge, but it was his sister, not he, who was tired. He wondered if there was something wrong with the bridge. But after crossing the bridge, he saw that after a few minutes, his sister's stats had increased by 1 unit. He also noticed that even though his level hadn't changed at all after the purple lightning, but thanks to this bridge, he could now make a breakthrough. He had never imagined that this bridge could harden him so much. After crossing at some point, he thought it might be worth going back and forth a few more times, but they suddenly discovered that the bridge had completely disappeared, and they had no way back and continued onwards. After a while, they saw that they had reached the 5 Sword sect as planned. They were sure that the carriage driver had not deceived them, and they went over the bridge and walked some more distance to reach it. Meanwhile, in the 5 Sword sect, the head of the sect, Baishun Zhenzen, said that someone had walked across the bridge. But the Lotus Peak sect head, Sizai Zhenzen, didn't believe him because he set it up yesterday and the magic barrier should only open 5 years later. The head of the Blue Lotus Peak, Jiaju Zhenzhen, complimented them that it was possible, for the barrier's effect could have weakened most likely due to the people staying at the gathering who had gradually destroyed it. Afterwards, Basin said that in spite of all this, only people with a strong spirit can pass the bridge of hardening. After all, the higher the level, the harder it is to endure the hardships during the crossing. And even he can't do it. Hearing this, the head of the Heavenly Way Peak was surprised and asked if a person's strength could be higher than Bai Shun's. But at that moment, Zhen came to the door and knocked, asking for a visit. When Bai Sun saw them, he said that they were his friends from Taijun Temple and that he wanted to greet them. He said that when he first came to the Five Swords sect, he and his brothers were sent to different sects to study, and that he had to go to the Taijun Temple where he met Master Tianzhong Zhenjian. He also added that it was 400 years ago and that they considered each other brothers. And he also said that the ones who have passed the bridge are probably the ones who have passed the bridge. Zhen said that they were very hungry, and that although his sister had already eaten the 5-element pill and didn't need to eat yet, he was still very hungry, unlike her. He also addressed all the Gidawas and said that though his level was too low to participate in the gathering, but he had come here for a mere request to Bai Sun. The heads were very surprised at what he said and realized that he could probably read their minds and knew about telepathy despite the hardening stage. Zhen went on to say that his mentor had meditated in seclusion for 10 days and that their temple had suffered from heavenly calamities on several occasions. And during one of them, it had been destroyed by purple lightning. Then his mentor went traveling and they were left homeless with nowhere to go. He didn't know if he could summon lightning while he was in the Five Swords sect since the spell no longer worked, but he asked for help. The heads made sure after checking the information that it was all true and started waiting for Bai Shun's decision. Zhen at that, though he made up half of it, but he saw from his thoughts that no one realized it. In the end, Bai Shun said that he understood their problem and that until brother Tianzong returned from his wanderings, they could temporarily live in the Five Swords sect. The brother and sister thanked him for his favor and were taken to show them their place. On the way to the location, Zhen thought that they could not worry about the lightning for now and that they would at least have food and drink to live with in peace. After they had left for the location, Bai Shun thought about the fact that he needed to think of some way to lure Qin Ming into their sect since he really liked her. They were prepared a lodging with guests from other sects in the neighborhood and told that they could rest in peace. Zhen was very happy to be in such a rich sect with such nice rooms. But they were given only one room, and Zhen thought that while his sister was still young, they could sleep together, but in a couple of years it would not be decent. When he was tucked in, his sister asked him to tell her a story, after which Zhen proceeded to tell the tale. The tale was that the shooting star had bravely fought the 12 signs of the zodiac to save Athena, and when it came to the scorpion, Zhen stopped his story as he had already fallen asleep. The next day, they decided to take a walk around the sect, and Zhen was very pleasantly surprised to see a large garden located in the sect. Then he found a pond with fish and decided to catch them and eat them. He was hungry and no one had fed him since they came to the sect. He did not have a fishing rod, so he decided to catch the fish with his hands. The heads of the sect who saw what was going on didn't like these manners. But despite this, Bai Sun told them not to pay attention to other people's faults and went about their business. When he approached Qin Ming, Lu Zhen told her that he would be happy to help if they needed anything and called her sister, to which she immediately said that she was not his sister. At this moment, the mentor was convinced that she had a special gift. He also apologized to Zheng for the rudeness, taunts, insults, and everything else since they joined the sect. He also told Zheng that his sister was talented and he could make golden pills and could help her with her breakthrough. Although he said it wasn't dangerous, however, Zhen saw an inner alchemy in his thoughts, which could denote taking power from other cultivators, thus raising his level. And then Zheng thought that although the sect is respected, but this Lu Zhen most likely wants to feed off Qin Ming's strength, and so he shouldn't be trusted. Sister also didn't want to accept his help, and they agreed, and refused Lu Zhen. But Lu Zhen was not going to stop there and reminded that Qin Ming was at the basic level, and the spiritual qi of the golden pill would be in favor. Lu Zhen thought that he should definitely get it and that Zhen wouldn't stop him from doing so. The others thought that Zhen and Qin Ming were idiots for refusing the golden pill they needed at this moment. Despite Lu Zhen's entreaties and his brother's remarks, Zhen once again refused to help, which surprised Lu Zhen. He didn't expect the refusal and decided to teach this rabble a lesson on the level of hardening, and engaged Luozen towards Zhen with a frosty qi, after which he would at the very least fall ill, and at most never be able to make a breakthrough again, begging for mercy. But there was no reaction to the infusion of spiritual qi. It simply flowed into the sea of qi and disappeared without a trace. This surprised Lu Zhen very much. Lu Zhen also noticed that the spiritual qi from Zhen's hand was going straight into Lu Zhen's body. But it couldn't be like this for long, because if Zhen didn't remove his hand in time, something very unpleasant would happen. But Lu Zhen himself had also rejected Zhen's hand in time, seeing his golden pill attack. He was furious at all these events happening, which clearly didn't go according to his plan. Next, Lu Zheng was approached by one of the heads, namely Jiaju, and asked if this was how his mentor had taught him to receive guests. Lu Zheng had nothing to reply to and had no choice but to apologize for the whole situation. But Jiaju went on and told Lu Zheng that he was dishonoring the honor of their sect by disrespecting the guests and was going to report to the head. When Zen saw all this, he thought that Jiaju was highly respected in the sect, so he went up to him and thanked him for reprimanding Lu Zhen. Jiaju said that he didn't need to thank him and that he couldn't stand Lu Zhen. He further added that he had no doubts about Zheng and Qingming as they were honored guests of the sect head, and he invited them to stay with him at the Blue Lotus Peak. Zhenyu liked this suggestion very much because in his opinion it would be just right to have a snack there despite the fact that the head wants to pull the girl to his side. And after that they went to visit Jiaju on the peak of the Blue Lotus. And there they were greeted, as expected, by a great variety of food and wine. Jiaju allowed them to start eating at once, and Zhen gladly did so. At the table, Zhen asked Jiaju what was this world of clarity he was talking about. To which Jiaju replied that it was one of the treasures of their sect, which was the main object at the gathering. Next, Jiaju asked if Zhen knew about the world of emptiness. Zhen replied that his mentor had mentioned it and told him that it could open up different spaces, that it could be carried around as a vault. Jiaju corrected him that he was talking about the manual void world. And the precious world of clarity, as Jiaju said, it is also a world of emptiness, but it cannot be carried away. It has a very large entrance, and it took the sect founder a lot of effort to discover this world, and that it has many amazing things in it. Zhen asked, knowing that this world would be the main object of the sect's gathering, is there really treasure hidden inside this world? Jiaju replied that there were indeed treasures there, but they did not belong to the Five Swords sect. He also added that at every gathering, their sect would take out a key and hide it in the precious world of clarity, after which the major sects would send their golden pill-level disciples inside. He went on to say that inside the precious world of clarity, the sect disciples fight each other in a battle for treasures, but to find the treasures, they must first find the key, which is what they do. Zhen was very surprised by this, as they might die there. Jiaju replied that the precious world of clarity was a dangerous place, but everyone who entered it followed the rules set by the Five Swords sect. And that being at the gold pill level, it is difficult for disciples to kill each other, because everyone's strength is equal, and if someone is injured, that person is evacuated. Plus, there are limits on the number of participants, and the weakest sects can send one person, and the strongest 5 people will remain. After that, Zhen said that if one could get treasures in the precious world of clarity, it would be much better than 100 years of cultivation. But Jiaju upset him, saying that it was not worth thinking about it, and reasoned. He told me that there are 2 restrictive conditions when entering the world of clarity. The first one allows only students at the gold pill level to enter, and the second one states that they must have a gift artifact with them, so they're not allowed in. Meanwhile, Lu Zhen was angry at Zhen for letting spiritual power into the golden pill, and that now his body was eating itself from the inside out because of it, and there was no way he could fight it. At the moment of this extreme pain of his brother came in to see him. Lu Zhen told him to leave and not to interfere with his meditation. There is nothing left for him at this moment but the support of the golden pill. Then he ate the pill and rejoiced that his spiritual chi of the pill he ate had slowed down the process. But he suddenly realized that the second-grade pill had become a third-grade pill, which was unable to stop the process completely. This made him even more angry, realizing that he had been harmed so badly by some hardened youth, and that he had also been embarrassed in front of everyone by Jiaju, and that he would report everything to the head. In his anger, he thought of a plan that he thought would kill everyone but him. Then came the next day, which was the day of the winter solstice, and which was also the official day of the meeting. The head of the Banli Genjin Serenity Temple, the head of the Jiangsan Genjin Pouring Water Sect, and the head of the Fox Genjin Spring Night Temple arrived at the entrance of the precious world of clarity one by one, but head Baishun was in no hurry to announce the start. It seemed like all the famous sects had already arrived, but Baishun suddenly announced that someone else had arrived. And that honorable person was the head of Taichung Temple, Zhen Jinming. Upon his arrival, Baishun announced that all participants who brought gift artifacts with them would have to enter the precious world of clarity one at a time if the artifact was genuine, and if the entrant was a gold pill level master. He reminded them that they could take any artifact in this world, but first they had to find the key. Only then would it be possible to leave the world, taking with them all the treasures they had found. After these words, he opened the portal to enter the precious world of clarity and invited those who could do so to enter. The first to go there was the head of the Serenity Temple, Xiang, along with Chixia, Jiayi, Bingding, and Sushu, providing the white dew nectar as a spiritual artifact, which was a first-grade artifact. Watching what was happening, Jen told his sister that someday they would definitely also go there after finding some gift artifact. But for now, Qingming was looking at the whole thing as a boring spectacle. The Serenity Temple's master replied to Zheng that he was a petty sect jerk who hadn't even brought an artifact, and yet he was making such a speech. Zheng replied that he had also been prevented from entering. The master replied to Zheng that sooner or later he would have a chance to enter the precious world of clarity, but Zheng would never be able to do so. Zheng didn't like the master's words and decided to enter the precious world of clarity without permission or invitation. This surprised everyone present because he had not provided a gift artifact and was only at the Qi tempering level. Following him, Qingming also jumped into the portal, which surprised everyone even more because they hadn't reached the golden pill level. But despite that, they decided to ignore all the rules and restrictions and enter the precious world of clarity. Jiaju told Baishun that Zhen might die in the world of clarity and he should be evacuated from there immediately. Baisun replied that there was no way he could save them because if they had entered the world of clarity, they had no choice but to act according to the rules. He added that they should be glad that at least they would be able to get them out if they were injured. Even though Qingming entered after Zheng, it looks like the precious world of clarity is trying to push her back out with the help of fog and many more things. Zhen told his sister that he was beside her and offered to carry her on his back because this mist had no effect on him, and his sister's Qi level had increased by 100, which was many times more than 10 years of meditation. She agreed to his proposal, and he carried her. Suddenly, at some point, Qingming noticed that time flowed strangely in this void world, and she didn't realize how much time had passed since they had entered it. She began to ask if he was hungry after so long and how he was holding up, to which he replied that there was no need to worry, because spiritual Qi was nourishing him instead of food, and his spirit was gradually becoming stronger. At some point, Qingming noticed the fog had completely disappeared, which pleased both of them, and they walked on without stopping. But suddenly, they were already in flight, after which they landed on another mountain. As it turned out, they had just jumped from one mountain to another without expecting anything like that. It didn't take long of tranquility before they were attacked and had to run away from the landing place. And having run away for some distance, they stopped for a rest. At this moment, the disciples of the Serenity Temple approached them and were surprised to see Zhen with Qingming in front of them. They decided to inquire about how Zhen and his sister were able to enter, to which Zhen said that his and his sister's names suddenly appeared on the stone at the entrance to the jeweled world of clarity, and they were drawn inside for some reason. He also said that they didn't have any artifacts, and so they shouldn't attack them. In response, the Serenity Temple disciples said that they wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, he wondered how those two had managed to stay without a scratch after falling from a great height and being attacked. They telepathically communicated with each other that something was clearly wrong here, and these two clearly had a protective artifact or some other catch that they knew absolutely nothing about. Zhen decided to interrupt them and asked why they had rushed over so quickly. He also asked if they had seen the black-clothed man who had attacked them. One of the disciples of the Serenity Temple replied that they were chasing that person and that was why they were near them, and it was a miracle that they had met them. They also said that this time the precious world of clarity was strange, and based on that they think it has something to do with that mysterious man. Then they suggested that they should go further with them, as it was not safe where they were. Zhen was surprised at this sudden anxiety and told Luzhen that he hadn't expected him to do anything like this. Zhen was surprised at this sudden worry and told Luzhen that he had not expected him to do anything like this, to which Luozhen replied that since Zhen and Qingming were guests of the Five Sword Sect, he should protect them. Afterwards, Zhen said that he had been told about this event as if there was a real war going on and that there could be no worries or concerns here. But he was reassured by the disciples of the Serenity Temple, reminding him of the evacuation. But Luzhen corrected them that something had clearly gone wrong this time, and he noticed that someone still died this time, despite the information about a possible evacuation. Everyone was surprised, and one of the students said that this was not the first time the precious world of clarity had been opened, but no one had ever died before. Lu Shen, meanwhile, still believed that Ziyang was with them and would call them back in case of danger. He also complimented that in the world of clarity, someone had secretly changed the magic system that set the rules, and one is left to believe for the best. He also revealed the turn-by-turn attacks of all the participants divided by 5 people. After listening to them all, Zhen told them that since they were at the gold pill level, they had nothing to worry about, and wishing them good luck decided to get away from them as soon as possible. But one of the students tried to stop them verbally and said that that man was hiding somewhere now, and if they went alone, they would be in danger, and she did not miss the chance to call them to go further together. Jen thanked them for their concern, but said that they didn't like to get involved with strangers. He thought about the fact that first they had taken their artifact, and now Qing Ming, whom they liked very much. In the end, the two of them managed to go further alone. Qing Ming asked her brother if it would be easier to search for the clues with a large group, to which Jen told her that there was no need to worry as he refused to go with Lu Chen not only because of her. According to his words and opinion, the point is that for these gold pill masters, the most important thing is to find out the best and take away the artifact from him. Therefore, it is profitable for them to continue the game without wasting time looking for the key. Besides, with the essence that Jen had injected into Lu Xin's veins last time, he felt that it was still in him. After all, he was behaving strangely this time, so it was better for them to stay away from him. Jen decided to let the Golden Pill Masters disturb each other themselves, and meanwhile, they would quietly continue their search for the key. Meanwhile, many teams found something interesting and started discussing what they found so interesting. After all, they know that the spiritual qi is quite different and it is more like the eye of the formation, and they decided to destroy what they saw. But Ziyang told everyone to be patient because he had decided to test everything on himself first. After all, it would be easy for him to destroy a formation, and the sooner they dealt with it, the sooner they could continue the meeting. But they did not listen to him and went to destroy the formation together. But it turned out that the formation is guarded by some beast and its skin is impenetrable. Even magic can't hurt it, and they don't know what to do with it. Next, they decided to find its weak spot and hit it together. But the beast was getting angrier by the minute. At some point, Chixia found the weak spot of the beast and killed it, which the others liked very much, because the anger of this beast could have killed many people. After killing the beast, it was possible to continue the destruction of the formation. And once Ziyang decided to check after destroying the formation how the other formations were doing, but something unexpected happened to everyone. The thing is, the destroyed formation turned out to be a trap, and when it was destroyed, the spirit destruction magic was released. Since Ziyang is at the highest level, he's not affected by that magic yet, so he decides to leave quickly and further away. And suddenly looking at Lu Jin, Ziyang wondered why the magic had no effect on him at all, but at that moment, Lu Jin decided to kill Ziyang. Ziyang didn't understand why the situation had turned so much in the other direction. Meanwhile, Jen and Qing Ming sat there, unsuspecting. Qing Ming asked her brother how they would find the key in such a big world, to which Jen replied that he had a clue with which he hoped to do so. He reminded her of the essence qi in Lu Zhen's body that was hidden in the world of clarity. Next, we go back to the fight between Ziyang and Lu Zhen. Ziyang realized that Lu Zhen had set this trap, but it was too late. Lu Zhen was destroying Ziyang with the words that no artifact could resist him, not even of the first grade. Ziyang noticed that there was something wrong with Lu Zhen's spiritual qi and that he was using black magic and said so in a voice. Luo Zhen agreed with him, saying that he was right in his thinking and that no one could win even with his double, and that no one paid attention to him at all because of his mediocre abilities. He also added that his sect brothers used to do whatever they wanted to him, and meanwhile he could not answer them. But one day he got lucky, and on the advice of one person he managed to get to the level of the golden pill. And that after that the attitude towards him immediately changed to the point of unrecognizability. The master began to pay attention to him, and his sect brothers began to respect him. And even Ziyang was glad to meet him once. But he doesn't care what kind of magic it is, because the strongest always wins. And once he's strong, he realizes he can have anything he wants. But it's Zhen, who he thinks is the most disgusting, that he wants revenge on. Suddenly, while Lu Xun was pushing his speech to Xian, Zhen came to him and told him that although Lu Xun's clone was able to deceive the Golden Pill level masters, he would not be deceived by him, and reminded him of his qi flowing in his veins. When he saw Zhen, Lu Xun became even more furious and said that the Lord had given him a golden pill to use during the breakthrough, but because of Zhen, it was wasted. And after his words, he tried to attack Zhen, but he had little success in doing so, no matter how hard he tried. Zhen further complimented that magic formation in the world of clarity or creating a doppelganger, such power is beyond Lu Xun's strength. And that means there is someone else behind his back. To which Lu Xun replied that even the 5-sword sect technique would be enough to kill him. And after saying that, he used the multiplication technique and continued to attack further. Zhen replied to Lu Xun that he was too slow and applied his technique. He had been training his speed by chasing pigs and hunting birds since he was a kid, and also told Lu Xun that he could only dream about his skill. Jen was also very surprised that being a disciple of the Five Swords sect, Luzin doesn't use any weapons in battle, even though there are surely weapons in the sect's arsenal. At some point during the battle, Jen had used a frost cloud thread, which turned out to be an artifact of the Taichung Temple that few people knew about. Luzin wasn't really surprised, but after that, Jen used the lightning heart and destroyed Luzin with lightning. He didn't even realize when he had mastered this technique, but it was just as he had planned. Qingming asked about the plan to injure and question the location of the key, to which Jen replied that he didn't expect the technique to be so strong and that he would sizzle Luzin. She tried to calm him down and said that it was because of Luzin's weakness, to which Jen replied that since he was gone now, it was necessary to look for the key now starting from the beginning, since there was no way for anyone else to find out. But it wouldn't have to be done already, as Qingming had already found the key among the ashes and told Jen Yu about it. Meanwhile, all those who were fighting with Luzin's doppelganger, who thought they couldn't win due to his superior strength, suddenly noticed Luzin's sudden disappearance. None of them realized that it was the doppelganger. Something very strange was happening outside as well. The spiritual qi at the entrance to the precious world of clarity became weaker and weaker with each passing moment, and no one present knew or saw what was inside. Everyone saw that the Qi tempering level disciples were sucked in, and all the gold pill level disciples were also inside at that moment. The heads were greatly worried that someone might die and that clearly something was wrong. Jiaju added that there was no reason for everyone to go in there, and now suddenly everyone was scared when they broke the rules and broke everything. But others, who were calmer, began to calm him down and said that Bai Shun should decide what to do. One of the chapters said that the void world can only be activated from the inside, and that they either have to wait 10 days or hope that one of the participants finds the key. But what goes on in the precious world in the meantime is not clear. The other head complimented him that they couldn't wait and that they needed to figure out how to activate it. Opinions differed dramatically, but no one had clearly expected that at that moment the precious world of clarity itself would open up in their opinion at that moment. Jen and Qingming, who had found the key, were the first to come out. The master of the Serenity clan began to ask Jen about his disciple Luzin, because he was not among those who had come out. To which Jen replied to him that it was a very long story, and that if Qingming hadn't found the key, they wouldn't have got out of there. He asked for a break despite the requests to tell everything sooner without keeping anyone waiting. Bai Shun asked Qingming in surprise how she was able to walk across the spirit tempering bridge and find the key. To which she replied that she was lucky to find the key. But if it wasn't for her brother, she wouldn't have made it across the bridge and found the key. After all, she had only walked a few steps across the bridge and was carried further on her back by Zhen. One of the masters asked the disciples if Qingming had really found the key, to which the disciple replied positively and that she had a rare gift, and it was immediately obvious that it was a talent. After that, the master decided to entice the girl into their Serenity Temple, but his disciple hastened to persuade him not to do so. He decided to warn the master that when they were inside, he had seen purple lightning, which was exactly the same as that very day on Mount Sang. He further complimented that the ascended master from the Taitsune temple was definitely protecting these two, and that if they forcibly forced the girl into their sect, they would become the enemies of the ascended master. After the apprentice's words, the master changed his mind about transferring the girl to him and replied to the apprentice that he was correct, and he and this girl were clearly not on the same path. Then we see how the heads and disciples of all the sects went to Qingming to express their gratitude for saving her life and opening the gates of the precious world of clarity with the key she had found. In response to Zhen's expressions of gratitude, he told them that they shouldn't be so ceremonious and that if they had valuable artifacts and medicinal herbs, they could give them to them as a thank you, but other than words, they gave them nothing. Zhen, seeing the thoughts of everyone present, realized that they were all liars and all their words of gratitude were false. They just want to drag Qingming each into their own sect, which of course he obviously didn't like. After all this, Zhen ordered Qingming to pack up and said that they could no longer stay in this place as the Five Swords sect would question for Luzin and he couldn't tell them the truth. After a while of packing, they still managed to leave the sect. On the way, Zhen told his sister that they would definitely catch a carriage and go straight to Mount Sang. Qingming liked the idea and went to look for a carriage. Bai Sun of course learned of their departure, and no sooner had they gone far away than he caught up with them and said that there was no better place for meditation than a small temple far away from the mundane world, surrounded by beautiful nature. He further complimented that he really wanted them to stay, but if they needed to leave, he would not detain them. But before doing so, he gave Qingming a prediction technique while talking. He also said that the magic would only last for 3 days, so she needed to do her best to learn the technique and that everything was up to her now. He also provided them with transport that they could use to go anywhere and told them that if they wanted to leave, they had to hurry before anyone found out. They of course chose to leave as soon as possible, and Baishun also told them before they left that he had foreseen that their master would appear at the foot of Mount Song in Shaxian County next May. Zhen thanked him for the information and they left as soon as possible. But what Baishun didn't tell them was that next year, the mountain abode of Celestials would appear in Shaxian County, and it was unlikely that their master would go to them. To which Baishun said that if they were able to get out of the precious world of clarity, they were clearly being protected by someone, and he thought it was their master in his new incarnation. When they arrived in Sha County, Zhen and Qingming noticed that the county had become very lively. It was already time for their master to return, and they were waiting for him at the designated place. To his sister's incredulous questions, Zhen replied that Baishun is a consummate master of predictions and he can't be wrong. He thinks they will meet him very soon. Zhen offered his sister something to eat. When he asked his sister if they had any money, he said that they still had extra money after selling the cart, so they shouldn't worry about it. So they went to the nearest noodle shop. They sat down at a free table and Zhen ordered 2 large portions of noodles for the 2 of them, and they began to wait for the dish to be prepared and served. And while they were waiting, Zhen managed to see the noodle shop owner's cultivator plate and was very surprised by it, despite the fact that the owner's stats were low. The owner of the noodle shop was not very happy to have such guests and was in no hurry to prepare and serve them a dish. Zhen walked over and asked if the noodle shop owner didn't want to make money by not serving customers. After Zhen's question, the owner still decided to serve them and gave them a portion of noodles. But Qingming didn't want to eat it even if she starved to death. And then Zhen decided to remember something strange. He remembered that the cake seller was a disciple of the Serenity Temple, and the beggar was a disciple of the Five Swords sect. And this no-good cook is a disciple of the Cloud Slope abode. When asked by his sister how he knew all this, he replied that it didn't matter and that we needed to find out what they were all doing in Sha County, especially since the master may return soon, and so this place should be safe. And at that moment, Zhen saw an exchange of thoughts, and one of those thoughts was one that talked about whether or not to warn his friends from the Taichung Temple. The answering thought was that Zhen and Qingming were under Tianzhong Renjin's protection, and that accordingly, they would be fine. There was also the thought of the Heavenly Lord's abode appearing in this place, but Sha County had already become a dangerous place, and that one had to worry about safety. These were the thoughts of Qixia and her brother. He realized from the exchange of thoughts that Qixia cared a lot for Qingming. But there was no way he could understand what kind of heavenly abode they were talking about. Qixia couldn't calm down in any way. After all, the protective curse of Taichung Temple was no longer there, and if something happened, in her opinion, the Qi tempering level head wouldn't be able to take care of Qingming's safety, and it would be very unfortunate. Someone unknown also saw the exchange of thoughts and asked Qixia what this abode was. Qixia replied that it was the place where a person who had ascended to heaven stayed and where many precious artifacts were stored. Qixia was surprised that this unknown person didn't even know about the mountain celestial abode and thought of even possibly checking it out. And this unknown person turned out to be Zhen. After he mentally communicated with Qixia, he understood why there were so many scum gathered in Sha County. But Qingming didn't understand what Zhen was thinking and asked him what he was thinking. She asked if her father was safe, to which he replied that he was on heaven's side and would be fine. She asked if her father was safe, to which he replied that the heavens were on his side and he would definitely be fine. Hearing this, Qingming said in that case they wouldn't look for him. Zhen said in surprise that it was her father. Qingming said that Sha County was very dangerous right now, just like the Five Swords sect meeting. She was worried about her brother and didn't want to hurt him. But he replied to her that she shouldn't worry because they were unlikely to meet someone like Luzin, for example. To which Qingming said that there were already many people in the county after all and she didn't know how to find him. Zhen reassured her and told her that it would indeed be a bit difficult for the 2 of them to do it, but he had a plan to make the search easier. And so we are transported again to Chisa, who has found her brother, who has returned unexpectedly. He wanted to find out information and met people from whom he learned something interesting. He came with the people who had been attacked outside the city by Jiti and Mogong, and as a result of this encounter, several people were severely injured. Chisa was very surprised to hear about Jiti and Mogong, who was the head of the Dark Path. He continued by saying that the master had taken command of the Serenity Temple, but the Five Swords sect had not yet arrived, and the most important thing now was to unite against the Dark Path to prevent them from entering the mountainous abode together. And then their conversation was interrupted by Jen, who approached Chisa and her brother without his sister, saying that she didn't like to be among people and was waiting for him outside. He told them that he had business with Ziyang Zhenjin, and then he laughed after reading his thoughts, which said that Ziyang Zhenjin was only friends with him out of politeness and hoped that he wouldn't join them. Next, he asked for the help of the Serenity Temple as he wants to know where his master is now. To which Xian replied by saying that he was just about to contact all the sects to stand together against the dark path, and if they discovered it, he would definitely let him know about it. Jen thanked Xiang for his answer and left. Chixia immediately realized who was exchanging thoughts with her, and some of the people already wanted to go to the tea house sooner to discover these bandits. It turned out that Xiang, Jen, and everyone present were considered bandits by some guards. Xiang wanted to settle this misunderstanding loyally and asked to bring the chief to them. But the chief who had ordered their capture was already there and talking to them. Xiang realized that he was talking to the head of the county and apologized for not recognizing him. He said that they were just trading and that they were not bandits. But the fact is that he received information through an informant that they had come to Sha County to prepare a conspiracy. Xiang replied that they were all disciples of sects and had not come to cause trouble at all. He also said that if they could make concessions to them, he had a pill of youth and could give it to them as a token of honor. The head of the county really liked this option and was very comfortable with it. And at this moment, Xianer came out from behind the curtains and was surprised that Xian had immediately resorted to such a ploy and thought that it was somehow even boring. She also said that she was not impressed with the Serenity Temple. Ziyang asked her what sect she was from and what land she was from. She replied that she didn't belong to any sect and that she was completely free. But in her opinion, humans and celestials are all the same and boring. Meanwhile, Jen thought about the fact that this girl from the Heavenly Slope Temple was clearly not just here for nothing, and accordingly, he should quickly find Qing Ming and take her to a safe place. Jen's escape attempt was immediately noticed and was immediately flagged. Xianer even said that he was a sect disciple, but he had no ability at all and was also a coward. And at that moment, a heaven and earth stone flew at Xianer, which seemed like some stupid shit to her. It was sent by Zhen in response to what she said. And then she realized that at the basic level, only a master could be good at wielding such power. But her master, who can kill anyone who gets in his way, came out to stand up for her and started attacking Zhen. And at that moment, Jia Ju appeared and told that master that at the spiritual transformation level, fighting a base-level enemy was a disgrace. Master Xianer was the same Jitian Mogong who had thought that Jia Ju had long since fallen asleep and had never expected to see him here. And since she saw him, she also called all the other peak heads to come out to kill him. She wanted to kill them all together, but Jia Ju told her that he could handle her himself and that he didn't need any helpers. So they began to fight. Chixia wanted to help him, but Ziyang stopped her and said that if they approached, everyone would be in danger. She's at the spiritual transformation level after all, so you can't interfere there. Besides, she is an elder of the Cloud Slope Temple, and she is here for a reason, so they must guard the mountain abode from the dark path, and they must not enter the battle lightly. And at that moment, everyone saw the appearance of the heavenly abode that everyone had been waiting for so long until that moment. And Jitian Mogong told Jia Ju that if they continued to fight, the mountain abode would already be empty. To which Jia Ju replied to her that he did not want the treasures of the mountain abode and told her not to hope for an end to the battle. But while they were fighting, many had already made their way to the abode, including the disciples of the dark path. And while almost everyone went to the abode, and Jia Ju and Jitian fought, Mo Xin's disciple was looking for something, walking around the county. And Zhen and Qing Ming were watching her. They became suspicious why she didn't help in the battle and didn't rush to the abode. First, she provoked the county head, and then her transformation-level master intervened. The thought occurred to Zhenyu at this moment that perhaps everyone had gone on a false road and that the real mountain abode of the Celestial was in the tea house. And he decided to go there and see what was going on there, what she was looking for. He thought about the fact that the entrance to the mountain abode could appear and then disappear at once without a trace. He surmised that the dark path knew from the beginning that the entrance was in the tea house, but they also didn't expect Ziyang to gather everyone in that particular place. And perhaps that was why Xianer had instigated the county head to catch everyone. After all, if an ordinary person intervened, cultivators wouldn't be suspicious. Therefore, the dark path decided to take a chance. And while Zhen and Qing Ming were searching for where that disciple had disappeared to, all the other disciples and sect heads ran to the supposedly real abode as they thought and hurried to get there first before the dark path people arrived. But they all ran up and saw that the Dark Ones were already dying in the abode and they went to attack. Xiang told Qixi to lead the way inside while he dealt with the men of the Dark Path. But Qixia suddenly realized that something was wrong and told all the other lights to stop and see what was going on. She realized that this was some kind of trap that would be very hard to escape from. After searching everything, Zen and her sister went down to the basement and found there a stone gate through which you cannot break through with physical force because there is a curse that allows only people with protective artifacts. The spell is quite strong and it requires a level of spiritual transformation in addition to the artifact. But despite that, Zhen managed to open the gate and they entered the abode. And they saw 3 doorways there, but they did not know which one to go to. For only with the help of a high skill of prediction can one determine the right path, and each doorway has its own peculiarities and traps. And then Zen told his sister that although the traps in the mountain abode were dangerous, they could not do anything to a talented person like him. After all, he had reached the highest level of luck, and it was time to finally take advantage of this bonus. And he chose the central path, relying on his intuition and on the fact that fate would not let him down in a place he did not know. And they eventually went to the central path. Jen said on the way that it takes a lot of talent to live in this abode, as even a toilet can be hard to find here. After walking through 2 completely empty rooms, Qing Ming asked Jen where the treasures that everyone was after were, and they suddenly found a room in which there were many bones and skulls. And Jen said that not everyone who lived in that place managed to become immortal in the end, then told Qing Ming that it was most likely a monk who came in here by mistake and not finding a way out of here died in the end. But Jen was confident that it wouldn't happen to them. And they came to a door, and then they opened it. And they did not feel any spiritual power there, and they thought that perhaps either it was something wrong again, or that disciple had passed on somewhere else in this place. But after a bit of looking around, they realized that they had entered a mourning hall. And Jen thought that his 99 points of luck had really helped them, as they had found the crystal of the frozen heavenly calamity. And Jen told his sister that it looked like they had found the most valuable thing in this mountain abode. But they didn't rejoice for long as the female disciple came in after them, and she warned them that there were traps in the place and that they would all die if any of them touched the artifact. But Jen had seen her Mesli and he couldn't be fooled. And she thought she'd been able to get ahead of them, and he told her to stop her trickery for she had already lost and should give up nicely. And he decided to touch the crystal in spite of everything. And they had indeed fallen into a trap in which Qing Ming could not use her spiritual power. The Dark Path disciple wasn't surprised because the traps of the celestial trap primarily restricted the use of spiritual power, and they fell from a great height into a deep cave somewhere. When his sister asked him if he was all right, he replied that he was so strong that he would not be hurt even after falling from the rock. But they were interrupted by a student of the Dark Path. She asked if he was so strong, why he decided to land with her help and asked him to get off her. She also added that it looked like he was lucky because the trap had stopped working. But it seems that he wasn't the reason why the trap stopped working. And they turned to see the silhouette of a man who looked like Master Zhen and Qing Ming's father. And the disciple of the Dark Path said that when she opened the mountain abode, she realized that no one had been here for hundreds of years and that this person had definitely lived here. But what they saw was just a residual memory. She went on to say that although this magic was quite rare, it could be dispelled quite easily. So she began to dispel this memory. While it was being dispelled, Zhen Yu and Qing Ming had something to look at. They both became convinced that it was indeed, just as they thought, Master Zhenya and Qing Ming's father. When he left, Qing Ming was very young and she didn't remember exactly what he looked like, but now she had this unique chance to see him. And he pointed in one of his last memories to the Temple of the Nine Saints, but none of them understood what it could mean and why he pointed to this temple. And suddenly somehow moved into the same cave fighting Jiaju and Jitian, who cannot stop fighting, but at the same time, neither of them can win. Zhen could have taken advantage of the commotion and attacked the old woman, but he's afraid of revealing his true strength, so he decided to refrain. He wanted to hold back for his sister's sake, but it's clear to see that Jiaju isn't very good at defeating her. A while later, Zhen still crashed and they stopped fighting and the old woman left. Jiaju told Zhen that they also had to leave. Then they got on Jiaju's transport that suddenly appeared and flew to safety. Zhen cooked rice in a safe place and gave it to Jiaju. Jiaju ate the rice and praised Zhen for being a very good cook. Zhen told him in response that if that was the case, he could pour himself some more. And in his mind, he thought that if the Five Swords sect didn't help them with the protection spell, he wouldn't like Jiaju eating all of his rice supply. After Jiaju ate, he said that his wounds were almost healed and that it was already safe to return. He also decided to talk about the Nine Saints Temple before returning to the Five Swords sect. Jen wondered if the Nine Saints Temple was a true path sect and was even higher in rank than the Five Swords sect. To which Jiaju replied that this was exactly the case. And he also added that the Nine Saints Temple has 9 mountain peaks, each of which was once ascended by a celestial, and that this sect practices incredibly mysterious techniques, and the lands there are like a paradise on earth with a variety of jewels. To which Zen replied by asking why he hadn't heard of them before, if they were even superior in stature to the head of the true path himself. To which Jiaju replied that it wasn't surprising since Jen was only at the chi tempering level and their master was long gone, and he could only learn about this temple from him. And just before Jen could think about the master digging him a hole, something immediately decided to land between Jen and Jiaju at a great speed. And what landed was a 7-colored divine bird that processes spiritual power. Its singing can be heard for thousands of leagues and it can be used as a means of transmitting information. After landing, she flew up slightly and released the letter directly into Jen's hand. After opening and reading the letter, Jen saw that it came from the Nine Saints Temple. Jiaju was surprised that they had written a letter to Jen and decided to ask what it said. It said that the Nine Saints Temple was inviting Qingming to study for 6 months as an exchange student. Not far away, Qingming was afraid that she might have to be separated from her brother. Jiaju was very happy for Qingming because it was such a unique chance. And he said that in the Temple of the Nine Saints, apart from Boxian Zhenjin, there was also a powerful Fadu Zhenjin, and that with Qingming's talents, he would learn a lot from him. He told Jen not to even hesitate. After all, even a master like Xiang Zhenjin would be happy to go there to study. Jen, meanwhile, was also a little upset and realized that she shouldn't refuse the offer. Jiaju also told Zhang Yu and Joy that he had already passed on the simple artifact tempering technique to him, and that he could practice making chi tempering level artifacts in his spare time after Qingming left for the Nine Saints Temple. Jiaju also warned Jen that the lower the quality of the materials, the higher the likelihood of success in making a chi hardening level artifact, and he started making his first artifact without waiting for Qingming to leave. But while he was making his first artifact, Qingming came out of his house, even though he had sent her to meditate before. And Qingming Zheng told Qingming Zheng that she felt bad about breaking up with him. He reassured his sister that they would not be separated for such a long period of time, and that he had a plan to go there and stay with her, even though he could only go there as an exchange student. These words made her happy, and then he added that perhaps at the Temple of the Nine Saints, they would find out where the master was, and that he didn't really want to send her there alone. He said with great confidence that if they followed his plan, nothing could separate them. So after a while, they went together to the place where the disciples were gathered. There was a man at the gathering place who would call out the invited students from the list one by one and tell them that in order to go up the mountain, they had to show the invitation that the bird had brought them and then check in with him on the list. But at some point, Jen was pushing his way through the crowd of invited students, trying his best to get through to the man. They were all surprised and angry to see his data because they thought he would never get into the temple. But despite the anger of the crowd, he made his way to the man who also tried to chase him away with the words that this was a place for students, not mediocrities like him, still at the level of hardening. Jen, meanwhile, did not despair and said that he was the head of the Taijiong Temple and that he had come to see Duxian Zhenchen to deliver an important message. That man, checking everyone along with the others who looked like guards, didn't believe him. After all, he looks like a beggar, and according to them, the head cannot be at the level of chi hardening and cannot ask to meet with their head. Having seen and realized the situation, he decided not to bother them anymore and decided to climb the mountain himself without waiting for their permission. One of them tried to stop Jen, but Jen used some kind of technique, after which the one who tried to stop him flew far away from him. Jen said at that he had scared him, and that was why he did that to him. Others suspected Jen of using black magic and decided to go report to Fadzhen Zhenchen about the intrusion into the temple by an outsider who shouldn't be there. The elder of the Nine Saints Temple, Fadu Zhenjin, was confused upon hearing that an intruder had invaded the temple, and he went with the servants to check who dared to go up to the temple without permission to enter. At one point, he even thought that it might be a man of the dark way, but upon seeing Zhen, he was very much surprised at his level of chi tempering. But he was also informed that he was on very good terms with Baishun Zhenjin, which surprised him even more. He then asked Jen if he had beaten his men, to which Jen naturally replied that it was indeed him. After hearing a positive answer, the master also used force on him in return for the servants and flew Zen towards the crowd of students. He was seriously injured by the master's force. Qingming immediately went over to him and thought that in this temple she thought the people in this temple were very cruel. And she also told them in response to the use of force that she had received an invitation, but her brother was afraid to let her go and he ended up getting beaten up for it. The master wanted to continue, but his apprentice stopped him, saying that there were many people watching them and it didn't matter whether it was true or not. He offered to take care of the two of them so that there would be no incident. After that, the master offered Zhenyu to heal his wounds in their temple, and in the meantime, he said he would go report everything to the head. Even though they were allowed into the temple, the master ordered them to keep an eye on them, lest something else unimaginable happen. A few days passed, and he went to the head and reported that a few days ago at the entrance to the mountain, someone made a mess and that his name was Zhen Jingming, and that he told him to stay in the temple without going outside. The head of Duxian Zhenzhen Temple said that although Zen was at the Qi tempering level, he was still the head of the sect and also Baishun's nephew, and that they shouldn't offend him. Fadu replied to him that Zhen in his opinion is clearly not a good person, and he's afraid that if Zhen stays, he might desecrate the Qi of their temple. To which Duxian replied to him that it was impossible for a person who had passed to the level of spiritual transformation to be so nervous, and that those who aspired to become celestials took fortune seriously, and that if Zhen climbed a mountain, it was also good fortune. He also added that he had heard about the Taijun Temple disciple that she was a once-in-a-thousand-year talent, and that she, with her abilities surpassing other disciples, should advance to the next level and that he should train her. Fadu agreed with Dushin's instructions and walked away thinking that this girl was the real problem. The next day came, and it was the day of training. On this day, the master took the crystal from Qingming and did not want to give it back to her under any circumstances. What he said to her was that instead of meditating diligently, she kept trying to leave, and that was why he had to do it that way. To which Qingming replied that she wanted to leave because her brother was locked up and wouldn't let her see him, and that there was no way she could meditate without it. Qingming threatened to kill everyone if they didn't return her item. As Fadu watched the situation, he realized that there was nothing he could do about it either, because he didn't want to let Zhen out. And at the same moment, Jiaju appeared and asked Fadu how he was doing. Fadu replied that Zhen, the nephew of the head of the Five Swords sect, was giving him nothing but trouble, so he wasn't doing well. Fadu asked Jiaju why he had come to study as a student. Jiaju replied that he didn't need it and that he went to different places out of boredom. He went on to praise Qingming, who according to his stories had passed the soul-hardening bridge, and that all the major sects wanted to get her as a disciple, and in case they didn't teach her anything in 6 months, the Nine Saints Temple would be disgraced. Fadu didn't like Jiaju's words and told him that if he had come just to make fun of him, he could leave immediately as he wouldn't tolerate it for long. To which Jiaju replied that he can't do that as they are friends after all, and he also said that he only came here to give his advice. After hearing this answer, Fadu asked Jiaju in surprise if he knew how to make Qingming learn, since he and his masters were not able to do so at all. Jiaju replied positively and explained that if Zhen was with her, things would go much easier and better. And at that moment, the very Zhen they were talking about appeared beside them. Upon seeing Zhen, Fadu became furious, for he told him to keep his head down, otherwise he said he would kick him out of the temple. But Zhen said that he only came to look at his sister and asked him not to worry. Meanwhile, Jiaju was comforting Fada while Zhen watched and addressed Qingming. Seeing Zhen, Qingming's qi instantly increased, which surprised the master and he returned her item to her. Zhen told Qingming that he was fine and that he would now be by his side. Hearing this, a joyful Qingming continued her training. Jiaju pointed out to Fadu at this moment how much things had changed due to Qingming seeing Zhen. It was all about Qingming mastering the tree control technique that had been explained to her many times, but all she had been doing all along was being cranky. But it turned out that she had memorized everything in the end. Jiaju told Fadu that Xian Zhenjin took a day to master the technique, while Qingming only took 1 hour, and that it was all due to the fact that she saw Zhen. In the end, Fadu agreed for Zhen to accompany Qingming and left. Meanwhile, Jiaju, along with Zhen, rejoiced at their joint victory over Fada. Zhen thanked Jiaju for his help and promised to pay him back someday. Jiaju in turn said there was no need to return anything since he had saved him in the mountain abode. He went on to say that Qingming had not betrayed their expectations, and that at this rate she could master a 6-month program in a month. And Zhen added that he would now consider it his mission to make Qingming great. Zhen also thought about the fact that with the help of the Celestial Calamity Crystal, Qingming would soon make a breakthrough to a new level, which didn't upset him in the slightest. Next, Jiaju asked Zhen about his master, if there was any trace of his presence in the Nine Saints Temple. To which Jen replied that since he had been locked up for a long time, he had no way of finding out, but now, after allowing Qing Ming to accompany him, perhaps he would have a chance to find out something. Next, Jiaju proposed an idea of his own. Although it was a bit dangerous, he thought it would help in the search for his master. Jen asked what the idea was, and Jiaju began to tell his story. He said that the remains of the ascended saints from the Nine Saints Temple are hidden somewhere in a valley on the temple grounds, and if circumstances are fortunate, the saint's body is protected by a magical formation, and the remains remain when the saint ascends. He also added that if one practices near the remains, one's progress will increase many times over, and one can learn the amazing secrets of the saints. And if Qing Ming uses divination abilities near the remains, she will learn something about the master. Jiaju also warned that this valley was a forbidden place and very dangerous. If you go in there, you might die there too. The only way to get there was to use a seal that could break the magic circle, and Jiaju had one. He also said that it was very difficult to get out of there alive. But Qing Ming asked Jen when they were going to go because she was ready to go right now. Zhen Yu liked the idea, and despite Jeju's addiction to alcohol, in his opinion, he was not a stupid man, and if he said that the remains would help them find the master, then so it is, and he decided to go as soon as possible. Then they took the seal and set off along the path that Jen thought would lead them to the valley. When they came to the floating islands with no bridges or passages between them, Zheng had an idea of how to proceed. Knowing that trying to overcome the magic formation without training people would usually fall into the abyss. But they had the Jiaju seal after all, which could summon the right island, and the passage problem would be solved. Qing Ming thought that Jen had learned a lot from being imprisoned, but at this moment he surprised her even more. He summoned the island of the three saints and he immediately came to them. And he took the first step to this island that called and said that it was as easy as riding a lift. Qing Ming asked him what a lift was, for she was hearing the word for the first time. He told her that each seal corresponded to a different floor, and all she had to do was press a button, and then she could immediately be on the right floor. But Qing Ming didn't understand what button he was talking about again. But he didn't have time to explain to her about the button, as they had already arrived at the right place, which had a very strong concentration of spiritual qi. Qing Ming said after arriving that she thought there were a lot of traps in this place. She also saw the fog they already knew. It was exactly the same as the precious world of clarity. She told her brother that if he went deeper into it, it would be difficult to breathe despite the high concentration of spiritual qi. Jen agreed with her, but he said that things were different now as he now had an artifact that he had recently made himself. And he showed her his manufactured brick of yin and yang. Qing Ming asked if the brick had fallen out of the wall of the house. Jen replied that it was, and recalled Jiaju's words that the worse the quality of the material, the easier it was to create an artifact, and that no matter what the quality, it could be used. And then Qing Ming noticed that Jen was able to dispel such a strong fog with such a low-quality artifact, and she liked it a lot. From what she saw, she was delighted. Next, Jen warned his sister that due to the very high concentration of spiritual qi, there were many strong monsters living in the valley and that they should be careful. But suddenly, all of a sudden, someone asked them what they were doing in this place. There was no way Jen expected to meet a person in this place. The caller was a girl who said that she was born in the Valley of Saints, but that didn't mean that she only had eating people on her mind. The reason she said that was because she had heard Qing Ming's warning about monsters from Jen. She further asked Jen if he would like to have some fun, because happy moments are so fleeting and rare. She came close to him and began to seduce him in every possible way, saying various compliments to him. She said that he had a penetrating gaze and that she could make him die of bliss. But the girl suddenly started to turn into a huge snake and tried to even bite Jen and would have if it wasn't for Qing Ming who saved Jen. After that, Jen said that it was a pity that it happened because he wanted to talk a little more with that girl. Qing Ming told him in response that it was a nine-tailed boa of the gold pill level and there was nothing to be sorry about. After Jen came to his senses, he began to fight with this boa constrictor. During the battle, Zhen told the boa constrictor that in a fight with the other monsters of this forest, he could safely be called the best, but the entire Chinese army would not be enough to break his brick-shaped artifact either. After his victory, he told the already dead boa constrictor that he was a cunning creature, for he had died and destroyed his golden pill. He had planned to give that pill to Qing Ming. And at that moment, Qing Ming asked Zhen if he was injured. Jen responded by telling her that he was fine and that, in his opinion, that boa constrictor was the most powerful monster in the valley. After that, he decided to mask his scent with the blood of a boa constrictor because in his opinion, this way they would attract much less trouble. Qingming confided in her brother and he made a mark on her and himself with the blood of a boa constrictor. So they went on their way. On the way, Qingming told Zheng that she couldn't determine which direction the saint's remains were and was concerned about it. To which Zhen told her that most likely not even Bai Shun would have identified where they were hidden, and remembered Zhen about his luck, which once helped them to go in the right direction in the mountain abode of the Celestial, and although it would not be worth relying on luck in all cases and situations, but he still decided to use it. When he saw a stick on the ground, which he thought was pointing in the right direction, he thought it was a sign and decided to follow the direction he had supposedly taken with Qingming. They reached the place to which the wand pointed, but they met there again a very thick fog beginning to roll in. Zhen tried to dispel this fog with an artifact, but he failed this time and was very surprised by it. Qingming suggested that it was most likely the very last barrier that protected the remains of the saints. Zhen complimented her that it looked like it was impossible to rely on the brick all the time, and he decided to try to add his own strength to the brick as well, asking for forgiveness from the ancestors of the Nine Saints Temple before doing so. Meanwhile, in the Temple of the Nine Saints, Jiaju woke up and he suddenly realized that he had once again gotten drunk and fallen asleep. He wondered where everyone had gone. He remembered that he had had such a good and long conversation with Zheng and Qingming, but for some reason they were not there when he woke up. He remembered that he had talked to Zheng and Qingming for a long time, but for some reason they were not there when he woke up. He checked the seal and it was not on his neck and he was very frightened because he remembered that he had not given it to anyone, but it had disappeared. He thought of Zheng and Qingming, who might have gone to the valley with it. And he was right, for Zhen and Qingming were in the valley and he had just at that moment launched his brick, put some of his strength into it, and he had finally succeeded in dispelling this fog as well, though it was harder to dispel it. And they went on after the destruction of the magical barrier, but were already much more careful because they disturbed the temple of the 9 elements and do not know what to expect from it. And their fear and caution were not in vain as a newborn level monster came to meet them. And despite being at the level of a newborn, it's stronger than a normal monster, and so Zhen told his sister to step back while he dealt with it. After that, after telling the monster that even monks at the newborn level were no match for him, he went on the attack. But unfortunately, Zhen couldn't calculate his strength correctly and once again summoned a heavenly calamity that could kill not only the monster, but also Qingming or even himself. But this time, he decided that he could control this celestial calamity with the help of an artifact, and decided to try to put it into practice. From the Temple of the 9 Saints, many people saw lightning coming from the Valley of the Saints. And they all ran there to protect the Valley of the Saints from the enemy they thought had called down heavenly lightning. When they approached the magical barrier, they saw that it was not broken, and this surprised them very much, because in case of penetration of the enemy, the barrier according to them should have been broken. However, Duxian noticed and said that the previous barrier was indeed broken, and the one they were standing next to was definitely not put up by him. To which Fadu asked Dushan who he thought might be strong enough who could erect a barrier over the Valley of Saints. To which Duxian told him that this barrier had definitely set up the 9 Saints Temple, but it was already 3,000 years old at that. Everyone was very surprised at his words, not understanding how a barrier set up 3,000 years ago could reappear in the same place. To which Duxian said that they could deny it as many times as they wanted, but the barrier of the 3 saints had activated again according to him. Zhen, meanwhile, had done exactly as he had planned. Zhen and Qingming survived, but the monster was injured, and Zhen was very happy about that. And while Zhen was rejoicing at successfully killing the monster, Qingming told him to turn his attention upwards, for she had noticed something there. And she saw there a cave from which an unusual spiritual qi emanates, and that most likely in her opinion, there are the remains of the saint. Zhen didn't really believe her words. He thought the cave was quite small, and it was unlikely that someone had hidden such valuable remains of a saint in this small cave. And then he thought about the fact that if they found the remains, even he at the qi hardening level might very well be able to advance to the gold pill level without a problem. And then they walked a little bit to something strange, which Qingming thought looked like the remains of a saint. But Zhen didn't feel anything and was very surprised. The closer Qingming came to the saint's remains, the more she became convinced that it was definitely him and that his spiritual power was as great as if there was a rush of water after a long drought. She asked Zhen to wait while she meditated for a while, and he gave her the opportunity. Meanwhile, he wondered why he couldn't feel anything. Where was that spiritual power? He could only hope that at least Qingming would be able to predict where they could find a master. He had waited so long that he even managed to sleep the entire evening and night, after which Qingming woke him up and saw that the saint's body had helped her advance halfway up the basic qi level path. He then asked Qingming, while still sleepy, if she had learned anything about the master. Since she had sat by the remains for so long, she must have learned something. She answered him that she had learned nothing, to which he said that it was all right, for they knew that the master was far away, and that even Uncle Basin could not possibly know, and that what they had seen in May he called only memories. But she told him that she had learned something else, namely that they could find great luck in the valley, and it would help them save 100 years of meditation. These words stunned Zhen, for this is another mystery. As they walked further through the forest, Qingming said that she had learned that there was a magical formation in the valley whose spiritual power was the same as the saint's remains. Zhen further asked her that if the valley is a forbidden place, isn't it strange that there is a magic formation here? After all, there is no point in hiding such an opportunity. Qingming replied that this formation is similar to the entrance and is for security. Suddenly, they reached something strange and outwardly incomprehensible and unlike anything else. Qingming said that it was the same chess-like formation, and she had heard that there was an ascended monk in the Nine Saints Temple who was strong in chess magic formations, and that it was most likely his work. And she felt sorry at that moment that they could not play, and even if they could hardly outplay that wise man. After all, no one in thousands of years had been able to do that. Zhen was very surprised, for he had seen clues as to where to make which move with which piece, and these clues were too obvious to him. And he started the game on those clues, which, as it turned out, later only he saw, because Qingming was very much frightened when she saw that Zhen has already started the game without knowing how to play chess. She told him that this chess game was created by an ancient saint, and that one should not act so recklessly, as it could be very dangerous. Zhen replied that she shouldn't worry about him and continued to move the pieces around. He said to just watch him, because he said he knows what he's doing, and he's wondering where the moves he's making will lead, to what entrance and what that entrance is. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the Valley of the Saints, the gathered people were still standing still and deciding what to do, just wait or do something about it. Jiaju said that those who had entered the Valley of Saints, in his opinion, were very likely to be in danger. Angry Fadu asked him if he was worried about them, and if he knew who had entered. Jiaju said he couldn't hear the question because he was exhausted from his last drink of alcohol. Fadu then continued to throw accusations at Jiaju without noticing anything else. Meanwhile, Duxian saw that someone from the Valley of Saints was successfully coming out, and Qingming suddenly appeared in front of them, which none of the people present except Jiaju, of course, did not expect. Everyone started asking her if she was alone or if there was someone else with her. They also asked her what had happened in the Valley of the Saints that she had decided to go there all of a sudden. Qingming replied that she didn't even realize what had happened. She said that her brother had suddenly won at chess, and she suddenly and unexpectedly found herself at the exit of the valley. They were very surprised by her words, after all. No one had ever managed to outplay the ascended Luo champion before, but suddenly Zhen Yu had succeeded. None of them had expected to hear this. Meanwhile, Zhen had a slightly different situation. After winning the game, there was a very bright flash, after which he moved somewhere and didn't find Qingming, who had been beside him during the chess game. Trying to understand what had happened, he thought that perhaps he had won a game of chess, and as expected, he discovered some kind of entrance through which he traveled to some house. Although he didn't realize why he was alone, he decided to explore. He went into the house, thinking there was treasure hidden there, but he saw in front of him what he thought was something useless. And that useless one was Luo Champion, who turned into a normal person and congratulated him on his chess victory. He went on to tell Zhen Yu that although he was able to win at chess, he was unlikely to be able to outplay him at Qing. He also told him that he will play some tunes and Zhen's task is to immediately say their names, and if he names them, Luo will reward him with 9 kinds of medicinal herbs of excellent quality. But before the melodies, Zhen still had time to ask what would happen if he didn't guess the names of the melodies. He wanted to know at once all the possible ways of further development of events. Luo answered him to his question. He said that if he made a mistake, the magic formation of the 3 saints would trigger, and Zhen would forever stay in that place without the possibility of ever getting out. When he saw and took the book, he read in it about 6 typical melodies in a harmony and thought that he didn't even know the words, and to guess the names of melodies was out of the question. But in the meantime, Luo began to play, and Zhen listened and responded. The first was the melody of the divine sounds of flowing water. Then there were the tunes Hoarfrost on the Mountain Range, Morning Dew Song, Ice Water Song, Flowers in the Mist, Clear Month, Flowers in the Mist, and many others. Zhen said the names of absolutely every tune. It wasn't surprising, as he did it just like he won at chess. He saw the clues and just mouthed the contents and ended up getting the reward and thanked for it. Luo Champion couldn't understand how Zheng had managed to do that, but he had no choice but to keep his word and give Zheng all the medicinal herbs he had promised him if he won. But Luo didn't promise Zhenyu to let him out of the Valley of the Saints completely if he won, and threw him into a room with a girl who offered him one last game of dice with numbers on each side in the form of dots from 1 to 6. She said he only has 2 tries and his job is to guess the number of dots that will be on the die on top. She put 3 dice in the glass and Zhen said the number 1 because he saw a clue with that number. She asked him why he had chosen that number, but he had nothing to say. After checking the number 1 on the cube, Zhen was not surprised, as he had already realized that the clues never lie to him. The girl accused him of cheating and said that although she was pleased, after 3,000 years this day had finally come, whereupon she teleported him to some place he didn't know. There were 3 saints in that place, including that girl. One of them said that he didn't think that the person who broke the magic formation of the 3 saints would be at the chi tempering level. When they set up the formation, they didn't have any level requirements, and accordingly, a chi tempering level master could very well break the formation. But even so, it's not like Zhen is a disciple of the outer temple of the sect. He decided to inquire if they were Saint Qi, Qin, and Du, because his system didn't display any information about them, which could only mean that they weren't real people and that they were like memories. He also asked them what it was all about, why they had left their spirits and created a structure. He was told that they had ascended to heaven 3,000 years ago and that only he could see their spirits. And about the formation, they said they intended it as a great opportunity for the disciples of their temple, but in no way did they think an outsider could get in. Then they said they were tired for the last 3,000 years. One of them said that if the formation was destroyed, their remains would dissolve and their bodies would be consigned to the earth. He also told Zheng that the 3rd circle of the formation had already been destroyed and there were still 2 more to go. So they gave him the most important treasure, and that treasure is the whole space he is in. And though it is small, he will always be able to have it with him. He was told that by the power of thought he would be able to control it, and that gradually he would learn all its secrets. Next, the girl turned to him and said that if he ever ascended to the world of saints, let him be sure to find her to play another game of dice. To which Zhen replied that gambling brings trouble. She also said that if he encountered any difficulties in the temple of the 9 saints, he should ask the disciples of the temple to help him. And as she flew away, she also said that they would definitely see each other again sometime. He then fell out of the Saint Valley at the same place where he had entered and the same place where Qingming had exited. Everyone looked at him in surprise and couldn't understand what was going on. After returning, a joyful Qingming immediately ran up to him and hugged him. He was also very happy to see her and realized that she was completely fine and that she had come out clearly much lighter than him. Standing a little further away was a very angry Fadu, who called him a little sod and asked him what he had done and why he had done it. Jiaju, on the contrary, was very happy to see him and told him in joy that it was good to have him back. The others realized that Zhen had broken the 3 saints formation and wondered if this was possible at the chi tempering level. Someone also realized that the treasure of their temple had fallen to an outsider and was not happy about it, but unfortunately nothing could be done about it. Zhen in turn turned his attention to everyone, greeted Duxian, apologized for his insolence, entering the valley, and for inadvertently breaking the formation of the 3 saints and was ready to be punished. Fadu told him that the Valley of Saints held the remains of saints and that it was a forbidden place. He also reminded Zheng that he had entered there without asking and asked about the techniques used in detail to break the formation. He also added that if it is suddenly discovered that he is in cahoots with the people of the Dark Path, he will be punished severely. Jiaju realized that something might happen now, for Duxian had been thinking for a long time about making a decision about Zhen. Meanwhile, Zhen was thinking about the fact that if an old man at the spiritual transformation level attacked him, he didn't know how long he would be able to hold out, and so he needed to figure out how to protect his sister from all of them. At this moment, Duxian made a decision, turned to him, told him to leave, and threw him outside the temple with a powerful punch. When he landed, Zhen asked for permission to explain what was happening. In his mind, he thought that, despite his level, he was not going to wait for death. After saying these words, Duxian picked him up and moved with him to a secluded place where no one was around. When asked where they had gone, Duxian replied that he was not comfortable talking to him in front of the others, and further asked him to tell him what had happened to the 3 saints. After the conversation, Duxian moved him to the guest house of the 9 Saints Temple. Qingming was in the house and she was very happy to see Zhen suddenly returned and asked him what had happened to him that he had such a look. Jen replied that he was exhausted because Duxian had been questioning him all day and all night. He said that although he was old, he was very tough and he could never be compared to him. Next, Qing Ming asked him what he would be punished for what he had done and what punishment awaited him for it. He wanted to tell her, but he was suddenly interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Fadu who, after the discovery of the saint's remains in the Valley of the Saints, came to him with questions as to whether he had done it, to which Zen replied that he had told Duxian everything. He said that the remains were scattered because the formation of the three saints had collapsed. Those three saints had set up the formation in the hope that someone would destroy it and they would find peace. He also said that Duxian had promised him that he would not be disturbed because of what had happened. Fadu told him not to even think that the head would be able to protect him and that their sect was based on the remains of saints. But he had destroyed them and therefore there was no longer anything on which the sect could be based. He also added that he would not allow any passers-by to make a mess of their temple and that it was he who desecrated the remains, that is, the treasure of the 9 Saints' temple. But some young man suddenly interceded for Zhen and asked Fado if he wanted to ruin his relationship with the sect head, to which Feidu replied that of course not. And after that, he asked Zhen if he wanted to exchange experiences. Zhen thought that the old man had decided to settle a personal score, and after that, he said that if he wanted to teach him a lesson, he wouldn't run away. But since it didn't concern his sister, he asked for permission for her to leave. And then suddenly Jiaju came in, surprised that everyone had gathered around Zhen and demanded something from him. He immediately asked Fadu if he had come to congratulate Zhen for successfully destroying the formation or for some other reason, to which Fadu replied that he had come to teach Zhen a lesson. And Zhen told them all not to embarrass themselves. Jiaju then hugged Zhen and reminded Fadu that he was the nephew of the head of the Five Sword sect and that he was also a member of the Five Sword sect and therefore asked Fadu to weigh everything before teaching a lesson. At this moment, everyone present and supporting Fada realized that Zhen was in a close relationship with the head of the Five Swords sect, and although he had done wrong, but Baisun was not to be trifled with. Especially they had violated the will of the head, and so they should leave. Feidu realized the gravity of the situation and decided to let Zhen go, before asking him how he would cope with the entire 9 Saints temple being against him. To which Zhen was silent in response. Zhen realized that Qing Ming hadn't finished her studies before she had to leave and said regretfully. She said that she didn't like what those old men were teaching her anyway and asked where they would go now. Hearing this, Jiaju said that the 3 Saints formation would still astonish them and that it was better to wait out the Five Sword sect for a while. To which Zhen replied that he knew that they definitely needed to leave the 9 Saints temple, but they couldn't go to the Five Sword sect. Jiaju, not understanding why Zhen thought so, said that the head would welcome them. But Zhen told him that he was the one who made this mess and didn't want to involve the Five Swords sect as well. He also told Jiaju not to worry because Duxian had promised him that he wouldn't be harmed, so he could go back to Mount Sang. Jiaju further agreed with Zheng that if the Five Swords sect was dragged in, it could really have a bad effect on it. He also told Zheng that he was correct and that not everyone was as indifferent to the world around them as he was. When asked by Zhen what this meant, Jiaju replied that he had seen the disciples of the 9 Saints temple transporting artifacts last night, and by his assumption, the bodies of the saints had not completely dispersed. Next, Zhen asked Jiaju why he thought the artifacts were needed to collect the remains of the saints. Jiaju replied that he had read the fortune and there could be no mistake and that the remains of the saints were the main treasure of the temple, which they would not give away so easily. The remains of the saints are not easy to obtain, as they are the main treasure of the temple of the 9 saints. And no matter how, someone thinks he must keep it, even if he has to use dark magic to do so. He had succeeded after a while, and now he could take them away and hide them in a safe place. He didn't think anyone would really go against Dusan's will. And then Zhen appears with Qing Ming and says that he thinks someone in the sect is moving away from the main disciples, and he's even a little scared. Zhen also asks him if he wants to hide since it's come to this. After all, when he heard that someone wanted to forcibly preserve the remains of saints, he immediately thought of him. Namely Fadu Zhenzhen. To which Fadu stood up and replied that this was a matter for the 9 Saints temple and that Zheng shouldn't be prying where he wasn't asked. In response, Zhen said that after the formation is destroyed, the bodies of the saints should be scattered and that this was the condition of the 3 Saints formation. The Temple of 9 Saints had been practicing magic for a long time, relying on the help of the remains, but it was time to end it. To which Fadu replied that this system was established 3,000 years ago, but now the situation has changed and one has to adapt, and he believes that the 3 Saints will understand him and not bark at him. Zhen went on to say that he was younger and therefore had to follow the instructions of the older generation, but when he destroyed the formation, he promised the three saints to fulfill the terms of the agreement. Fadu angrily tells Zhenyu that he doesn't feel like killing him, so he asks him to just leave, after which he promises to personally escort him out of the temple and apologize to the head. Next, Qingming appeared next to Zheng, who upon seeing Fadu asked Zheng to pay attention to the fact that Fadu looked very strange. And something incredible was really going on with Fadu at the time, and he urged me not to force him to kill anyone at that moment. He also said that he swore on his life that he would not let the remains of the saints disappear, as in his opinion it was the foundation of their temple and those who interfered with it would die. And he activated at that moment one of his abilities that can kill anyone. Qingming saw this and told Zhen that what he had activated at that moment was called Red Lotus Fire. After which Zhen sent Qingming to hide. Feidu attacked Zhen, and when attacked, he told him about not even thinking he could resist in front of his fire. But Zhen was not going to give up so quickly and replied to him that cultivators had to improve, and the lust for the power of the remains could lead him down the wrong path, and asked Fada to admit it. Fadu responded by telling Zhenyu that he had no right to judge his methods, as he thought he was still wet in the mouth and only at the qi tempering level, and that he would easily tear him to shreds. Zhen responded by saying that since it was useless to talk, he would prove everything by deeds. He then took out his yin and yang stone and used it in battle. Said Zhen before fully activating also said that the Red Lotus Fire compared to the Heavenly Calamity, it was nothing. Seeing the resulting hole in the cave from a single lightning bolt and seeing many others nearby, Qingming realized that Zhen had once again summoned a Heavenly Calamity, and she thought that he needed to be rescued. Zhen told Fa that he couldn't beat him and that it was better to give up and leave to beg Duxian Zhenzin's forgiveness. He thought in his mind that he had to finish quickly, or the disaster could kill them all at any moment. Realizing what was going on, Fadu decided to teach Zhenyu a lesson after all. He went on to say that this was the difference in levels. And then he struck Zhenyu. He also said, laughing, that it was true that the saints had said that if he could not retain his strength, he would call down a heavenly calamity. But he added that in this way he could not defeat it. But Zhen wasn't going to give up even after those words. He told Fadu as he continued the battle that if he couldn't change his mind, then he would have to kill him. And with a blow, he pounded Fadu into the rocks, but Fadu was alive. He stood up and said he had to kill him. Meanwhile, in the Temple of the Nine Saints, at the peak of the Frozen Soul, Dusan saw all this and said that Zhen was a fool. Meanwhile, in the cave, Fadu told Zheng that if he repelled his attacks, he would invoke a heavenly calamity, and then he would see how long he could last like that. Zhen told him that ever since he came down from Mount Zhang, only Luzin knew about his weakness. He said that he was dead, but Fadu knew his secret, and so he concluded that he was with Luzin when he was dying. Suddenly, a bald man with a blindfold over his eyes appeared near Fadu and tried to come out, but Fadu tried to hide him as much as possible to keep him from coming out and told him that he should not come out. The man said that last time he failed to kill him, and he was therefore very offended. Zhen addressed him that he had instigated the machinations in the other valued world of clarity and had almost exterminated an entire generation of saints, and now he had appeared in the Temple of the Nine Saints, whereupon he asked him who he was. To which the man said that he was only helping them fulfill their purpose and he saw nothing wrong with it. Zhen also asked in the affirmative if he had now come for the remains of the saints. Qingming told Zhen at this moment not to use his power, for it looked like he was also being possessed by Luzin. The man went on to say that he had helped set up the formation to preserve the remains, and he in turn would share their power with him as a thank you, and asked if their pact was still in effect, addressing Fad. Fadu replied that he would keep his promise, but since the situation was different now, he would have to find him after killing Zhen. After that, Fadu left. Qingming wanted to go after Fada, telling Zhenyu about it. Zhen tells her that she doesn't need to do that as he's at the spiritual transformation level and she can't handle him, and that the real problem is that man with the blindfold. The man heard this and laughed and said he would consider it a compliment. As Fadu was running away, Jiaju met him on the way and tried to stop him, but Fadu pushed him away and said he didn't have time for a showdown. Jiaju replied that at that age, it was time to learn to control your anger, or else you could get into trouble. After his words, Jiaju tangled Fadu in the holy rope and tried to hold him down. Fadu was surprised and asked how long he could hold him. But Duxian came over and replied that if Jiaju couldn't do it, he would try. Meanwhile, Zhen told the man that if he wanted to kill him, then let him approach him. And in his mind, he realized that since there was no information about him, it could only mean that he wasn't alive. The spirit told Zheng that he was good for figuring it out and that he had nothing to fear, unlike Zheng. To which Zhen replied to him that he was fearless, and so he also had nothing to fear. The spirit laughed and said that he had not expected that Tianzhong could cultivate such a disciple. Next, Zhen asked the spirit how he knew his master. But the spirit refused to admit it. After refusing, Zhen hit the spirit with his stone. In response, the spirit told Zhen that he didn't think he had killed him because he couldn't, and asked him not to be a fool because he didn't know who was next to him. Qingming said at this moment that although she couldn't predict much, the fact that he was from the heavenly palace was certain, and it pulled its lengthening arms towards Zhen and Qingming. Zhen tried to stop it all with a stone, but the spirit succeeded in moving them. Zhen's first thought of where they were in was that it was an illusion. He also realized that the information panel was his real body, and that it was so blurry that he wanted to get closer. But suddenly, abruptly, both the illusion, the scoreboard, and the spirit all disappeared. Zhen asked Qingming if she saw where the old man ran to, not forgetting to thank her for her help. Qingming replied to him that she unfortunately only managed to find out that he was from the heavenly palace, and other than that, no information. She also asked what the heavenly palace was, to which Zhen replied that he didn't know, and that it would be worth asking Jiaju about it, since he knows a lot and most likely knows something about the heavenly palace as well. As they walked and along the way, Zhen thought about where Fadu could have taken the saint's remains. Qingming drew his attention to a very interesting sight. They come to the entrance of the cave where Fadu lies bound with a holy thread. The next day, Zhen thought about the events of the previous day and came to the conclusion that he had not let the saints down, no matter what anyone said or how much he doubted it. Dusan came to him and said that for disobeying Fadu, he would be punished by hermitage for 100 years, but that he had fulfilled the last will of the saints of their temple and asked him to end it there. Zhen asked Duxian who the blind old man was, who he was, and if he had told Fadu about him. Duxian replied that he had not said anything since he was caught, and also added that if he was interested in something, he could ask him, and he would say everything he knew in return. Zhen then asked if the heavenly palace belonged to the sect of saints, or if it was the sect of the dark path. To which Duxian replied that it was a sect of saints, but not really, as the heavenly palace was between China and the realm of the celestials. It's a kind of link between the Chinese and the immortals. The inhabitants of the heavenly palace transmit the will of the immortals, and the head is an immortal, and there is no way he can get in contact with ordinary cultivators. But there is one thing. And Duxian told him that every 15 years, the heavenly palace holds a gathering of celestials, and 5 minutes before it, they can descend from the mountain to choose a person who doesn't belong to the sect of saints but has a gift. And each sect of saints, according to him, recommends a person, and then these people gather on the holy mountain. To which Zhen said that it meant that they were the voice of the celestials and were different from ordinary sects of saints, and that therefore they didn't try hard to get disciples. After which, Duxian continued that the heavenly palace was not holding the gathering for its own benefit, and that the gathering was to select the best, and the most important purpose was to select the most gifted person to bestow the source of the heavenly Tao upon him. Duxian further added that all those who are granted the source of the heavenly Tao receive the golden pill, and that, for example, he, Baishun, the head of the Cloud Slope abode, the head of the Serenity Palace, and others had received the source of the heavenly Tao in due course. Zhen went on to say that, in his opinion, once in front of everyone's eyes, a ray of luck falls on the chosen one and he starts his career. To which Duxian said that although he didn't understand what Zhen said, but something was similar. To which Zhen said that he would go to the holy mountain and continue to search for the master's footprints. He would also go up to the holy mountain, participate in the gathering, and receive the source of the heavenly Tao. Duxian indignantly replied to him that the source was not as easy to obtain as he thought. Next, Zhen asked him if he had any other choice, to which Duxian replied that he understood the plans he had made with his master. Zhen further told him that he could not stay in the Nine Saints Temple as he wanted and as the master wanted him to which Dusan asked him how he knew who wanted or wanted how, and said he didn't recall a time when he mentioned friendship. Zhen replied to him that the master knew exactly about his further entrance into the cave, and so he left him an inscription of the Temple of the Nine Saints, bringing them to this place, and that at first they thought no one was waiting for them, but he treated him well and left Qingming to learn. He also added that it was the master who wanted them to come to ask for protection, and that if he hadn't broken the formation of the 3 saints and hadn't learned about the heavenly palace, he might have stayed in the Temple of the 9 Saints as the master wanted him to. He went on to say that he thought the master wanted it because he himself had encountered danger, and then they should definitely find him. Duxian replied that in that case he would not keep them and would always be glad to return. After that, Zhen thanked him for the conversation and left, but in the meantime, Duxian thought about the fact that Tianzong had cultivated an excellent disciple. The next day, Qingming woke up and noticed Zhen already packed and asked him why he had gotten up so early that day. to which he replied to her that he was going to the spiritual mountain, to the heavenly palace. Qingming told him that since he had already made up his mind, she wanted to go with him. But they were interrupted by Jiaju entering the house. When he came in and heard them talking, he asked how they were going to climb the mountain, which had not yet come down from heaven. He was also surprised that they were going to leave without telling him. He went in, sat down, and started drinking. Meanwhile, Jen asked what it meant that the mountain had not descended yet. How was that even possible? To which Jiaju said that only once every 15 years for the duration of the gathering, the spiritual mountain descends from the holy world to China. Jen further told him that the longer they stayed in the temple, the more people would miss them, and so he was going to dedicate his life to cultivation, and to do so, he had to get to the spiritual mountain. Jiaju realized that they were determined and decided to give them the secret technique of the five-sword sect as a farewell gift. It was one of the main defense techniques of the sect, and it helps to gather chi energy and maintain health. Jen, seeing this, decided to present a poem. With a sword in his hand, in a cloud of dust, intoxicated with wine, he ascends to the sky. The moon and the sun are given to the diva, and he lies drunk and laughs at everyone. When Jiaju heard the poem, he asked if he had thought of it himself, adding that if he called it a drunken swordsman, there would be a lot of fans. Jen replied that wine makes you think of other things. As they left, Jiaju told Zhenyu to think about the name and that they would meet again in 5 years on the spiritual mountain. After Jiaju left, Qingming also wanted Jen to compose a verse for her as well. To which Jen said that he would teach her verses from the 300 Tang poems on the way, and suggested to set out on the road at the same moment. After that, they left the Temple of the 9 Saints. On the way, Jen offered to learn the first verse and began to recite it. A lonely goose went out to sea. He doesn't even look at the pond. And suddenly he was interrupted by a girl who had met him on the way, who had been playing with him in the Valley of the Saints. And she told him that she had not been expecting him, but that she wanted to play with him. Seeing her, Jen was very surprised and asked what she was doing in the place they were passing. To which in reply, she told him not to worry, for she had come alone this time, without helpers. Jen pulled out his artifact, not knowing what to prepare for, and asked her what she needed from them. To which the girl said she wanted something. And without finishing the sentence, she started pulling something out. He thought that she wanted to get the artifact and wanted to hit her first, but she managed to get the box and give it to him. He didn't expect this turn of events and asked her what it was, to which she said that she got it with great difficulty and that it belonged to Tianzhong. Jen didn't open this box right away and thought that this girl was up to something evil. Qingming supported him and said that he shouldn't trust her. The girl, seeing the disbelief, asked for the box back. At this moment, Qingming changed her mind and said that it was unlikely that this box could contain a bomb and that she wanted to see what was inside. She was very curious about it. Opening the patterned box, Jen saw Tianzong Zhenxin's promissory note written 10 years ago lying in it. Jen read in the receipt that the master had borrowed something from the hermit Wanlin and had to pay it back after 3 years, but the deadline had long passed and Jen wondered who Wanlin was. To which the girl replied that Wanlin was a holy hermit and if one were to find him, one could ferret out information about Tianzhong. Jen then shifted his gaze from the box to the girl and asked her why she needed his master, thinking in his mind that it was most likely her devious plan and the hermit Wanlin was already waiting for him somewhere. The girl replied that she admires Taichung Temple and of course Master Tianzhong. Jen further told her that he knew she was talking rubbish and that he was well aware of how cultivators felt about their temple. He also pointed out that that old man wasn't around right now and that if she wanted to stay alive, have her stop lying. To which the girl continued to talk and assured that she was telling the truth and that she admired him too, for he was able to destroy the formation of the 3 saints. Zhenyu was fed up with all this and decided to attack the girl. She was surprised because she didn't expect that a boy with a chi level tempering level could use the kind of power he used to attack her. During the attack, he told her that if she was looking for his master, let her go to the hermit Wanlin herself and stop sending him there. To which the girl replied that if she too had destroyed the formation of the 3 saints, she would have gone, and she went on to say that although the hermit Wanlin accepts anyone who asks to meet him, but before doing so, he must give him something of equal value. According to her, it must be something very valuable to him, and that in case of cheating, he would recognize it immediately. She also said something else. The most important thing was that Hermit Wanlin was 1 step away from calamity, and if he didn't go there and find out where Master Tianzong had gone, it would be too late. Jen realized that Wanlin would soon bring disaster, judging by the girl's words, and that only a saint would be able to defeat him then. After these thoughts, he asked the girl if she wanted to use him as cannon fodder. The surprised girl asked him what cannon fodder meant, for she was hearing these words for the first time in her life. To which Zhen replied that what it meant was that she wanted to trade him for a visit to the hermit Wanlin, and that she would then have the opportunity to capture him, beat him up, and extract the information she needed, and once again asked if he had understood her correctly. Without waiting for an answer, he found and broke the girl's artifact, to which she was very surprised. Meanwhile, Jen continued to ask why she needed his master, and said more about how he would break many other things besides the artifact if she continued to refuse to answer. To which the girl responded by saying that without the artifact she was powerless, and that if he wanted to kill her, he could do so now at any time he liked. Jen suddenly saw and pulled something else very precious to her out of her hair. Those things he took from her also turned out to be her artifacts, and this time she begged for them back. Qingming looked at one of the items, and although the girl said that they were her artifacts, Qingming said that it wasn't an artifact and asked Jen to really give it back to the girl. Jen asked Qingming in disbelief if this was the yin and yang jasper jewelry her father had left her. After a while, he looked closely and realized that the color was different. And Qingming replied that it wasn't hers, but she noticed something. She then tried pairing this piece with her jewelry, and they surprisingly fit together perfectly. After what he saw, Jen asked the girl what it all meant. She replied by asking if they would believe her if she told the truth. And she went on to say that it could very well be that she was also the daughter of Tianzhong Zhenshen. But as she expected, they didn't believe her. Qingming replied that it was impossible because the master only had one daughter and that it was her. But Jen stopped Qingming and asked to let her elaborate on this. The girl continued that since she was his daughter, that was the reason she was looking for her father, otherwise she wouldn't have come to them without her mentor. She went on to say that she told them the whole truth and answered the question and demanded that they give her the jewelry back. Jen said that he didn't believe her, thinking she was a disciple of the dark path, and said that he would keep the jewelry. Qingming fully supported him in this, to which the girl angrily responded by asking if it was okay to take away an item given to her by her father. He told her back that maybe he couldn't, but he had decided to do just that. And after that, he took her somewhere. She didn't understand what he was up to and asked him what he wanted to do next, to which Jen replied that it didn't matter at all whether she was really the daughter of a master or not, but he could let her go back to the Heavenly Demon Palace, and said that he was taking her to Taichung Temple. But while he was doing that, Qingming said that she could handle it herself. Her jealousy awoke and she decided that she would not let Zhen Yu hold her hand and lead this girl. But he still brought her to the end himself, and the first thing after she saw the temple, she said that in her opinion they had big problems with rooms in the temple, and that she did not agree to sit in such a terrible place. Qingming showed her her room, and the girl was even more emotional, saying that she knew that Taichung Temple was poor, but she didn't expect that it didn't even have hot water to wash. She was also surprised that there are no beds and you have to sleep directly on the floor. She reflected on the fact that she wouldn't be able to last much longer like this. After the night, the next day she came out and told Zhen Yu with Qingming that since this temple was so poor, it was necessary to change its name to the Temple of the Beggars. At some point, they noticed the fact that the temple's protective barrier is being attacked by someone while the girl is telling them the name of the temple. Seeing the reaction and misunderstanding from Zhen and Qingming, the girl explained to them that it was her who had come to save her. The arrivals said that they were from the Tiger sect and were related to the Heavenly Demon Palace, and asked them to give Xian Air back. Otherwise, they were willing to destroy everything in this place. Zhen pulled out his brick and said he'd see who would beat who, and went on the attack. One of the guests was surprised that he was dared to be attacked by someone who was only at the Qi tempering level. Next, they noticed Zhen's mouth, and in their opinion, he was saying something, but they thought it was unlikely to be some strong spell. In fact, Zhen was really quietly telling himself that he needed to control his strength. But despite that, he still managed to summon lightning and fell everyone to the ground. Afterwards, he smilingly spoke about how he had overdone it a bit and didn't mean to take things to that extent. Seeing all this, the girl was very surprised and asked Zhen how he was able to handle a whole group of disciples from the Tiger sect. She couldn't understand how he could do it. They were so strong and there was little anyone could do against them. To which Zhen told her she was asking too many questions and made her chop wood. At this moment, she remembered that she had never had to work in the Heavenly Demon Palace before, and that she had always been taken care of. But now, not only did she have to live in a horrible place, but she was also forced to work. Sometime later, she said that she had chopped wood, fixed the roof, and washed their clothes, and she had done it all very quickly. She also said that she was also the master's daughter and should not be treated like that. She also talked about how there were no peers her age in the palace, and so she often ran off the mountain. Her story was interrupted by Zhen, who asked her to help him set off fireworks. Xianer asked what they were, but Jen didn't answer her directly at first and said that he had asked someone to make them for him. He went on to say that fireworks were beautiful lights that were launched into the air, and since Qingming's birthday was coming up, he wanted to launch them in her honor. The girl agreed to help him because she was curious how it would all look like as a result. They set off fireworks on Qingming's birthday. Jen congratulated Qingming on her 12th birthday, and Qingming loved it all. Meanwhile, a frustrated Xianer thought about how having a brother was really great. Jen turned his attention to her and told her that she had done a good job over the past few days and told her to wait a little longer. He also told her that he wanted to set off special fireworks for her. She asked Jen in surprise if Qingming would be against it. He thought about what she said and went to ask Qingming herself if she would mind. Qingming replied to him that if he wanted to do it, she wouldn't mind, but she was also a little upset because of the same jealousy. Qingming ended up helping him set off the fireworks, and Xianer, seeing it in the sky, said that it was the most beautiful thing she had ever been given, after which she thanked Jen for it all. And suddenly, old man Mosin came to them and told Zhenyu that he was very brave for daring to kidnap Xianer. But while he was walking, he managed to trample on the remaining fireworks that hadn't been set off. And angry in the end, he decided to attack Mosin. Without smelling anything, Mosin asked Jen if this was all he was capable of, or if he could still pose some sort of threat to him. After all, if that's all he thinks he has to do, he doesn't have to work very hard. Seeing her uncle and his attitude, Xianer was scared for Zheng, for she could see that her uncle was very serious and Zheng would definitely not be able to handle him. Seeing Xianer's worry, Qingming decided to intervene in their battle and help Zheng win the battle. Seeing that Qingming obviously couldn't handle her uncle, Xianer saved her. Qingming, meanwhile, didn't understand why Xianer had saved her. After that, Xianer went up to Uncle Mosin and told him that, in fact, Jen had actually done absolutely no harm to her in all these days, and that she shouldn't worry about her so much. But Mosin didn't want to believe her and said that it looked like Zen was a very bad influence on her, since she had decided to help him, and in his opinion, she was Jen's hostage, and in that case, he just had to kill him. So he went to attack Jen again. But Xianer said that she was not in this place at all because of Jen and Qingming, but for a completely different reason. What she said next was that she just wanted to make them pay for embarrassing her herself, and after that she asked them not to get in the way of her revenge. After that, Mosin agreed with her and just watched from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Xianer went to attack Zhen. Qingming realized at this moment that Xianer had wanted to harm them from the start after all, and that they were not the slightest bit wrong in this opinion. But something very interesting happened. Xianer, instead of attacking and seriously harming Zhenyu, suddenly flew far away from the Taichung temple. Seeing this, the Mosin who was watching meanwhile flew after her to see what was going on and where she flew off to. It seemed to Qingming that Zhen had dealt Xianer a single blow and in doing so had repelled the old man along with her. To which Zhen told her that he didn't even use his strength to do so. Xianer just played her role, which she herself invented very well. The thing is, Xianer had quietly instructed Zhen to pretend to hit her, and she would meanwhile lead her mentor away from the temple. He agreed, and they acted out a realistic scene, which Zhen told Qingming about. Qingming was happy that Xianer wasn't as bad as they thought, but she saw the crushed fireworks and was immediately upset. Zhen saw this and told her not to worry and that he would give her a new gift. He also added that the gift would be their master. He said that he had decided to go to the hermit Wanlin and ask him where their master had gone, hoping for a definite answer. And he suggested that she find the hermit Wanlin and find out where their master had really disappeared to. Qingming happily replied in the affirmative, and they set off the next day. At some point, they reached the mountain of the reclining Buddha and realized that they were no longer there. Xianer had told them that the hermit Wanlin lived in a temple on this very mountain. They came to the temple and queued to enter. As it turned out later, a general who had won a tremendous victory in battle before their arrival and was supposed to be promoted, but suddenly he managed to die after the battle, passed away in the temple. One of the people present next to Zheng said that most of those who met with the hermit once ended up just like this general. And then Zen realized that the most valuable thing in most cases was life, and that since most of those who met him had given it away, it was the same reason why things were the way they were. The same man further said that if Wanlin asked for his life, there was no way he would give it up because there was no point in it after death, which Zen was in complete agreement with. He thought that a man has only one life, but some people live it so badly that they are willing to go to such lengths. And suddenly at some point, Jen realized what he was willing to give to the hermit instead of his life. And also suddenly for him, he was recognized and asked to give way, reasoning that if he could destroy the formation of 3 saints, he could deal with the hermit just as easily. So he went along with Qingming straight to the hermit after they were let through. They stopped by the hermit's temple and Zhen said who he was from and then asked to meet him. Wanlin was surprised to see that someone from the Taiqiong temple had come to see him and reminded them that years ago their master had borrowed something from him but had never returned it. To which Zhen replied that they were just here to talk about it. Wanlin went on to say that it didn't matter what reason they came to him and that an exchange should be made first. To which Zhen said that he was going to give him his life. Qingming was very surprised and scared when she heard this. But Zhen further complimented that he changed his mind about giving up his life after a bit of thought, and at this moment he held out the soul return pill in his hand to Wanlin, which if used could be used to return to life after death. Zhen also said that ordinary people dream of getting this pill to live a second life, but he got it by chance. He also said that it was equal to his life and the most precious thing to him. Wanlin agreed with him that the pill was indeed very valuable. Zhen told Wanlin to take it for himself in that case. But Wanlin wouldn't take it and told Zheng that the pill wasn't the most valuable thing he had and that if he wanted to give something in return, he asked him to give him Qingming. Zheng was very frightened by these words. He would not be willing to give it up and almost hit Wanlin. Wanlin continued his speech by saying that all who come to him give away their most precious treasures and he should keep what he wanted. And according to him, that was why Qingming would have to stay because only then would he share information about their master with him. But Zhen said that it wasn't about him wanting information about the master in return and complimented that he wanted him in return. And since it's not possible, in Zhen's opinion, it could be considered that he had outsmarted him. This made Wanlin laugh a lot. After laughing, he told Zhenyu that he already had people who wanted to take his life in exchange for theirs. Just like he was asking for his now in exchange for Qingming's. Zhen wondered if the men had succeeded in what they had planned. But Wanlin's negative answer upset him a little because he had hoped that he would answer positively and that he had a chance. Wanlin said he exchanged blows with them and the men died. Zhen, meanwhile, reflected on the fact that Wanlin had confessed to ruthlessly killing his own guests who had come to him for help. In spite of this, Zhen decided to realize his plan and asked to concede to him the right of the first strike, after which he would be able to respond according to his plan. Zhen hoped that before his fist could reach his face, he would immediately scream and ask for a change of terms. He really hoped that his brilliant plan would work and that he wouldn't have to leave Qingming to him, but Wanlin said that was not the way to do it. Zhen asked him in reply if the elder should not follow the established order. To which Wanlin replied that the point was that he couldn't beat him. Surprised, Zhen asked if he liked to joke. Wanlin replied that he doesn't like to joke and always speaks seriously, and only those things that need to be said at any given moment. He further showed the beast in his hand and said that it had lived for 300 years and immediately shook as soon as he stepped on the threshold of his room and told him that he could not defeat it. He also said that he has been sitting in this room for 100 years and only now was able to meet someone like him, and also added that because he had achieved his goal, he didn't need anything else from him. After that, Zhen was surprised by all this happening and decided to ask about the master since he didn't need anything in return and could still get information. Wanlin replied that his master had asked him to lend him a human life for Qingming. And he did so for the simple reason that as soon as Qingming was born, a source of heavenly Tao appeared in her body. According to him, the source of the heavenly Tao is quite useful for cultivators, but for a newborn girl with no skills, the heavenly Tao was her death sentence. Without the master's help, she would not have lived to be 3 years old, and he said it was only because of his help that it was possible that she was still alive. Qingming had already started expressing gratitude to Wanlin for helping her save her life, and Zhen was also expressing gratitude to Wanlin along with her for doing so. But Wanlin suddenly stopped it all, saying that he shouldn't be thanked for it because he wasn't the one who had saved her. He said that it was only their master's merit. Zhen asked Wanlin if he had even given the master the life that the master had asked for Qingming. To which Wanlin replied that it wasn't about that at all, but that he just couldn't do absolutely nothing. He went on to say that this was why he had lent their master a letter of recommendation and sent him to the spiritual mountain to find a celestial to help Qingming survive. The thing was that in order for Qingming to live, the Tao source in her body must constantly be infused with the spiritual energy of a celestial, otherwise without it, she might die at any moment. And then Zhen thought about the fact that he hadn't seen any celestials in the Taiqiong temple and that their spiritual energy was brought to them by the very 999 celestial tribulations they had successfully experienced there. He further asked if all the energy of the heavenly calamities had entered Qingming's heavenly Tao source. He also considered the reason why Qingming was still alive and asked why the master had not returned. Also remembering that the spiritual mountain only descends to the human world once every 15 years. Then the master, even with a letter of recommendation, would not be able to find them, decided to ask Wanlin if he was deceiving them. Wanlin replied that whether they believed him or not, it was exactly as he said, and that this could be confirmed by the promissory note that was in Jen's hands at the time. He further added that he had recommended their master to go to the spiritual mountain and find a celestial capable of helping Qingming, and the reason why he didn't return was unfortunately unknown to him. And then Jen thought about the fact that if the master left them a message in the cave and told them not to look for it, then it means he knows that Qingming is alive, but for some unknown reason he can't return to them. And what's more, that person from the heavenly palace they met before isn't good at all, which means that getting along with the heavenly palace isn't as easy as they previously thought. At one point, Zen was even frightened and wondered if the master was now being held in the celestial palace and could not get out of there. And then he came up with an idea of how he could quickly get to the spiritual mountain. He asked Wanlin to lend them a letter of recommendation, for they must find a master. He thought that Wanlin would give them the letter, and they could also use it to come to the spiritual mountain just as their master had once done. Wanlin answered them that he had no letter, but he knew another way to help them get to the spiritual mountain, and he asked them to do one thing for him and asked if they would agree to do it. Realizing that they had no other option, Jen agreed to do whatever Wanlin asked him to do on the condition that Qingming would not be harmed in any way during this task, for he wanted to keep her with him before doing so. Wanlin promised that it wouldn't affect her and asked her to deliver a letter that appeared out of nowhere, which he immediately held out to Zhenyu in his hand and asked him to take it. After leaving Wanlin, Zen decided to look at the letter. He didn't find the name of the recipient on the letter, but he did find a magic compass there, with an arrow pointing to the recipient's presumed location. Wanlin, when handing over the letter, told Zhenyu that if he delivered the letter safely, the recipient would tell them how to climb the spiritual mountain and how to find their master there. Also, after their departure, he ascended to heaven, because he had fulfilled his will, which he had to fulfill, and without the fulfillment of which he could not have previously ascended under any other circumstances. They came to a place on the compass where the recipient should have been, but it looked like no one had ever been in that place. At that place, the compass stopped showing anything to indicate that they had arrived. As they walked forward, the scenery changed abruptly and suddenly, and they found themselves in the same place where the spirit had moved them earlier. A place that looked like an illusion, but they didn't know exactly what it was, even though it wasn't the first time they'd seen it. They also noticed that the envelope suddenly also disappeared from their hands, as if it never existed. It just vanished, which really surprised and frightened Jen and Qingming, because they were supposed to deliver it in one piece and it had disappeared. Bao Ernai came out to them and said that Wanlin had only written a few lines in his letter, "Now I can ascend to heaven," and that he had no heart. He was also surprised that Wanlin had brought Jen and Qingming to him and decided to find out what it was all about. They asked him if he was the recipient, to which Bao replied in the affirmative. And when asked what this place was, he replied that according to the instructions of the envelope, they had passed through the teleportation barrier and thus had come to his abode. After that, Jen said that since the letter had been delivered, let him tell them about how to get to the spiritual mountain. After all, they were only delivering the letter for the purpose of finding out this information. Bao replied in surprise that Wanlin had not said that this place was a spiritual mountain. Jen was also surprised at this answer, but at the same time he was also glad to hear it. They didn't know that the spiritual mountain could also be reached through a portal and that now they could find their master and the celestial and everything they needed. And that was the end of the story, albeit abruptly.